I'm gonna stop sharing for now, and then I'll share my screen when we're good. Cool.
Yeah, that works.
Cool. Three, two, one. Welcome to Two Peas on a Pod. My name is Peyton, and joining me as he always does, my brother Parker. How you doing today, man?
I am doing good. Had a good day, just woke up from a good nap. Uh the Magic are down in the third quarter or the fourth quarter, down 3-1. So it looks like they're about to make their way out of the playoffs. And yeah, we're here doing a podcast.
Yeah, down bad by a
That's
lot.
life.
I won't say how much because it's not good. But aside from that, I will say one thing before we get into like actually talking about real sports. As you know, I've had some troubles knee injury wise, but your boy is back on the saddle and has been hooping regularly again. And so I've been doing
I
this as a
went
bit.
I went and hooped like 3 weeks ago.
How did that feel?
And dude, I'll tell you what. We played full court, 5-on-5, indoors in a gym, and your boy was water. I mean, I have not lost anything with the shooting aspect of the game. Now, my handles are just gone. It's like the, I guess, every day of like dribbling a basketball, like the normal stuff was just so much harder than I remember it being. But the shot's still there, so it felt good. But how's your hooping going recently?
As a bit, I share with my friends my box score after every time I go hoop. Usually and I can tell you right now, it's a lot
You
of
keep
Draymond.
track. You keep track of your stats.
Roughly, I don't actually, but I have a rough memory of like what I do because I have like a weird memory that works that way. It's never like fully accurate, but
I'm just imagining like Apple Watch between every point. Like
just
Siri, I made a 7 foot jumper. I'm just
you know what's funny is
imagining.
Aaron told me that I should wear my Apple Watch while I'm playing basketball to track like my exercise or whatever. But now I'm gonna wear it for a totally different reason. I'm gonna like have the notes app pulled up and just like add
You
one
just
every time to different.
you just step on the court instantly and you go, Siri, start my stopwatch. And you just clock your minutes. You're like, today I
Not
recorded 28
minutes.
minutes, 13 points, nine
So
rebounds.
so I like jokingly do it like a lot of times it's Draymond Green stats situation where it's not a lot of points, but it's a lot of rebounds. It's some steals in there, decent amount of assists.
If screens were a stat, you'd
Yeah,
have an A+ teammate grade.
correct, correct. Um, but today's stat line, and then we can talk about real sports. Was I was 2 for 3 from three. I was 4 for 6 from the field. So season high of 6 points for your boy. Um, and this is in one game, not like across games. 8 rebounds. I think I had like 5 assists. I had 2 steals, 2 turnovers, and I had a flagrant foul.
Hey, why isn't this like an app? Like bad
I
like
bet you it is. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if I can go on my Apple Watch. I'll probably do that after I get off and see if there's an Apple Watch app where it,
there's
like you
got to
can
be an
track
app
your
where you
little
track your
stats on
pickup.
your
You got to
phone.
be able to track your pickup stats. And it's
But
almost like golf where you have a handicap.
yeah,
You just show up to the court,
yeah.
you're like, this is what I
But I say the joke. I jokingly say the flagrant foul, but it's because uh, guy on the other team was an ex tight end for the Florida Gators. He was like 6'5", 255, and he was coming down the lane for a dunk. And I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna like shoulder check him a little bit as he goes up. And he missed it, but it was like he was very clearly pissed off that I did that. So
Yeah, well, yeah, that was a yeah, well, I agree with him, but at the same time, I also agree with you. It's like, bro, why are you trying to drive through the lane and dunk
right.
in a pickup game of basketball? Like, yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, playoff
Anyways,
basketball.
yeah, to real playoff
Magic
basketball.
out
Magic
of
are about
it.
to be out of the playoffs.
Nuggets and Clippers are playing now, so there's not much we can really say there. It's tied up series 2-2, about as even as any of the other series look.
It's about how we
Uh,
predicted that one to go.
mhm. Pacers close out on the Bucks tonight.
They did in overtime. So Bucks. Let's talk about that for a minute because there's obviously some talk about the Bucks. Like, what happens now? Damian Lillard torn Achilles, which sucks at 35. Like, I would be shocked if he comes back and is even half of the effective player that he was at this point in his career. Because it's just, I mean, Kobe did it, and I mean, he was okay, but like the Lakers were terrible after he came back. right?
Right.
And I mean, I don't really know how effective he's going to be for a team like Milwaukee, who with Giannis is theoretically always competing for a championship. Problem is, there's a lot of speculation around whether Giannis is going to be there. And
Yeah, that's the thing is, well, do you think Giannis could win another? Giannis couldn't win another championship by himself.
I
It's
don't
not.
think he
I don't
could.
think it's possible at the
And
state of the league now.
somebody else said this. I was listening to like some discourse around the NBA this week, and somebody made this comparison of like the NFL to NBA player comparison of like where their legacy might lie by the end of all this. And a lot of people were drawing some comparisons of Giannis to like the NBA's version of Aaron Rodgers, where it's like he's going to win a few MVPs. He has the one title, right, in the 2021 season, which was like a weird year anyways. Not the bubble necessarily, but like the year after the bubble where it was still kind of like the leftover remnants of a shortened season and all that kind of stuff. And but you know, with Aaron Rodgers, it's like if he had not won that Super Bowl super early in his career, we would think so differently about Aaron Rodgers as a player. The one ring carries so much weight, and I wonder if we're going to feel that way about Giannis for the rest of his career. Like I think he is a player. He can be the best player on a title team, right? You agree with that?
He can be. I don't think he will be.
Right. I think it's just because here's the thing: like, what situation could he realistically go to that you immediately say that team is going to immediately become a contender for the title, right? Like other obviously he's in Milwaukee, but like there's been Miami rumors for a while. I don't think he's going to Miami by any means, but like
I don't
that's
think
been
Miami gives him that much of a different situation.
I agree with that. I think it's about the same. Like there's just not that many places you can go where it's going to increase your odds dramatically. I mean, like maybe I don't even know if they would do this, but like does Houston just say like screw it, we'll just trade a bunch of these young players and assets and just push forward to immediately try and make a run at this thing? Like maybe, but I mean, Giannis he's still like he's still in his prime, but it's not going to be like for much longer before he's starting to get a little older.
Well, here's the thing with Giannis is the style of basketball he plays doesn't really win a lot unless you're surrounded by like the right people.
Which
Like you
currently
can't
he is not, like
like
clearly.
you can't win a lot go and even and he's not I mean he's gotten better, but he's never been a great free throw shooter. So it's like the style of basketball he plays, how many 3-point plays does Giannis really come up with? Where team has Steph Curry shooting 40% from 3-pointers and throwing up 20 of them a game,
Right.
you know? Like that's just going to be more productive in the long run,
Yeah. So
in my opinion.
The whole Giannis Milwaukee situation is up in the air. They're out of the playoffs in the first round. Pacers. Not gonna say that I'm not gonna sit here and but like this was an outcome that seemed like it seemed possible. They were just gonna and we you and I even talked about it like they didn't sweep, but it was one game close, right? like
Right.
it was one game away from being a sweep, and we even said like this after the first game. I think it was like this looked like one of the most likely series to where we might see a sweep after that.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Indiana just looked like the better team
yeah,
all the way around.
agreed. Now, you know, I know it's like 2 days away, but like the Minnesota Timberwolves went 3-1 against the Lakers. That's been a big storyline in the
In a
last few
crazy
days.
fashion.
Yeah, Ant-Man and Nasri just taking over in the fourth quarter. And I mean, I'm wondering if we're getting to a place where Ant is maybe preparing himself to be the face of the league for a while. You know, because that's really been the thing that has been talked about for a few years now with LeBron and Curry and Durant and all these old stars that are kind of carrying the face of the league, so to speak, still, right? Because ultimately that is the case. Like they are still the face of the league.
But the
Um,
league's in good hands.
I think it's in really good hands because I mean, obviously you're gonna have Luca still on the Lakers. Like he's
Hmm.
in a big market. That's great for basketball. You have as much as people don't like him, like personality wise, and I think he's a cornball. Like Jason Tatum is
Jason Tatum.
like
Hmm.
he's a great player, top five like MVP candidate probably every year for a while. Um, same thing with like same thing with Ant at this point, if you ask
Hmm.
me. And so but I do wonder from a personality standpoint, like I wonder if Ant is just going to be able to carry that part of the
That
face of the league
role
because
just
yeah, like being in all the commercials and like being a good interview, always providing like something for the media to talk about every day and pushing that part of it from a sense of like not just his play on the field, but like and not even in a controversial way, but just the off the field, like being an actual entertainer, so to speak, off the court. Because he is. He's like genuinely people love him as far as like the comedic relief that he provides a lot of the time. And just how much he just does not give a crap about what anybody like he will just say whatever he wants and it doesn't matter.
right, right.
And so I wonder if we're getting to a point where he is going to be like the most recognizable face of the league. Like where even like, not saying our mom would, because our mom doesn't watch basketball, but like I don't know. Even like somebody like our stepmom who watches basketball but not like other teams, right?
Would
Knows
know
who
what.
Anthony Edwards is.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is I don't think we're gonna have a one
There's not
guy
gonna be a
for
one guy. Okay.
I don't. Michael Jordan did it, but like even back when Larry and Magic were there, it was still like a two guy thing. Like it doesn't have to be a one guy thing.
No,
In
it
my opinion.
doesn't.
Like you got to look in all markets. I mean, you have Victor Wembanyama, who's pushing that as far as like a world known
Right.
athlete. Obviously, Nikola Jokic isn't going anywhere just yet. Like obviously,
No.
he's not far behind these other guys, but he is a little younger. I think he got drafted in what 15.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's going to have an extra 4 or 5 years, I think, if he wants to play basketball. Really, that's the problem with
Right.
Nikola Jokic. But there's plenty of athletes that are going to carry that weight as a group. I don't think it's going to be a one guy thing. I think there's going to be
Yeah.
3 or 4 guys that are A tier guys that do carry that, and then there's going to be 7 or 8 guys that are just really really well known all the way around.
Yeah.
So because back in the day, Hakeem Olajuwon was a household name,
Right.
even though he
Right.
wasn't the face of the league. There were guys like that back in the day that were
Right.
just big household names. Everybody, respected them, respected their game. They win championships. I don't think anybody's going to go on this run like LeBron and Michael have. I don't think we're going to have that from a team or a certain player anymore until somebody else comes into the league.
That's a good point. I think you're probably more right that it's not going to be a one man show, so to speak. But the only other like thing we could talk about is just how like Golden State pulled off a really good win against Houston yesterday, or well, whatever day it was, relative to like when you're listening to this. But they go up 3-1 against Houston in a like really really good finish in the fourth quarter, and I mean Jimmy Butler on a night like whenever Steph Curry was just not having the best game, Jimmy Butler stepped up and was able to kind of carry the load for that team, which was something that he hasn't really been asked to do in a couple of years since the Heat title run, right? And the fact that he can still do it is a good sign for the Warriors moving forward in the playoffs. Outside of that, I mean, like the Heat get swept. Like there was the Cavs sweeping the Heat in historic fashion. The Thunder sweep the Grizzlies. Sorry, my memory's failing me now. And outside of that, like I mean, and then the Magic are about to get beat. But all the other series, I believe, are still going on at this point. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
check in next week. Probably have a lot more to talk about. Maybe we'll finally, we'll have an idea of who the next round matchups are in the East and the West. So at that point, I don't really have any other items to talk about because a lot of what we are going to talk about, unless you have something, Parker.
No, we're about to really dive deep on some NFL draft stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, which that's probably the reason why a lot of people are here if you are listening. So, before we do that, we do have a couple shows this week that we do want to shout out. I know that the Tree Takes Pod, Parker, I don't know if you want to shout out your boys since those are your OGs as opposed to mine, as far as the show goes. But with that said, other than that, we do have some coverage that's going to be upcoming. I mean, like Simon, I know is going to have some coverage coming up on the NFL draft, and you can even go on the YouTube channel and see the draft grades that he put out for each of the divisions on YouTube as well. As far as Tricky Takes, what are they going to be covering this week, Parker? Do you happen to know?
I actually was just trying to find their ad.
I'll cut this out.
Uh, no, it's okay. I don't know where their ad is. It says Austin said our show last week was pre-draft content. If nobody else has anything, I'll write a quick ad for our MLB show this week. He didn't write an ad.
Oh, okay. Well, they'll
He
probably
never wrote
do
one.
something related to baseball. This is probably going to go uncut on YouTube anyways. It's not a big deal. So go to
Okay.
Tricky Takes. They're going to talk about the MLB race at this point in time.
Okay, cool.
And we're still new at this whole thing on doing live ad reads. Give us a break. And
Well,
then
I just didn't know we had one. I'm sorry.
no, that
I
was
didn't
kind of
come
my bad.
prepared.
Bad prep. But and I'm sure Odds on Favorite will also have some coverage in regards to the draft. That's pretty much a lot of what the podcast will be talking about this week. So go check out Simon and Friends. Go check out Odds on Favorite. Go check out Tricky Takes. Go check out Because of CONCACAF. I think that's about it. I think that's all we got. And then
I think it's
obviously
everything.
us. So with that said, we can go ahead and get into our draft coverage. So Parker, the NFL draft is taking place. I'm going to be sharing my screen here for all the good people because what we're going to do here is I like draft grades. I don't mind draft grades, like traditional A, all that. You're getting a grade for school, but I've enjoyed using Tier Maker for a long time, as a lot of people have, for stuff like this. And
Hmm.
we're gonna make our draft tiers, and for these, our franchise altering being the number one, just a draft where the complete idea of what your team is from last season to this season is completely changed based off what you did in the draft. That's the idea of that category. Great Hall is a step below that, where like whatever you did was just you got a ton of good players, or what we think are good players, and like you filled a lot, basically all your needs. Maybe there was like one pick that was like not something we agreed with, but almost everything else you did correctly. Impactful, a step below that, where it's like you got good players at positions that you needed, but maybe there was a couple of picks that didn't make a ton of sense. But for the most part, you liked what they did, and you think it's going to actually have a pretty big impact on what they do as a team going forward. Passable, meaning I'm sure there's some good picks in there. There's some bad. Overall, it probably doesn't affect your team that it probably like slightly impacts your team. Not as much as truly impactful, but like it's not really a needle mover, so to speak, right?
Right.
Or maybe it's a little bit of a needle mover. Disappointed, I would say, is the category where it's like, sure, maybe you like did a couple things right, but it could have been a lot better based off what we know now. And then the last category is pretty self-explanatory. WTF are you doing? I mean, like, if it's a draft where it's just like, what the hell is this team have going on, and why are they doing what they're doing? It's pretty
Hmm.
self-explanatory, where it just doesn't make
Right.
sense what they did in the draft.
Right.
We're pretty much going to start alphabetically, team by team, and we'll place them into our tiers. However, we do have our own tiers, which Parker did his, I have mine. I'll show those later in the show, but as a consensus, we'll come together and make our own tier and have our two P's draft tiers at the end of this thing. So, Parker, let's go ahead and start with the Cardinals. And
Okay.
I'll come out and say this. This is my favorite drafts of the entire league.
This is a top three for me.
This
So
is I don't know if you put this in franchise altering, but I did.
so I put it in Great Hall with an arrow up. So
Okay.
it's one of those for me. The thing that doesn't make it franchise altering is the fact that I don't see like I hate to say this, but I don't see like a skill player. And that's a big deal to me as far as
Yeah,
franchise altering. Like I don't see a single guy that's going to be a top five jersey sale player for the Arizona Cardinals. And I don't mean that in any kind of way.
you're
It's
right.
just
You are
one
right.
of the what franchise altering usually in my head is like, okay, this guy's going to score touchdowns or he's going to have 10 plus sacks a year or, he's not going to have four pancake blocks and two holding penalties. That's just
Right.
not franchise altering. But they're in my great hall category. I mean, if you want to slide them into the great or into the franchise altering, that's okay with me. If you have like a
Here's
a way of selling why it's franchise altering.
I'll give you my like little pitch on selling you to why they're franchise, like why I think it's franchise altering.
Because their
It,
first five picks are like really good picks.
I mean, I could not believe the players they got in the top in their first five. Like they didn't have to trade. They didn't have to. They just stuck and picked in their
Hmm.
spots, and it was like, how did you get these good of players rounds 1 through 5? And they didn't have an allotment of picks. They just had their own picks,
They're like
stuck and
right in the
picked.
middle, 16,
Yeah,
15, 14. They weren't even like high end each round.
right.
So,
And here's my argument is, which if you remember this, like we talked about, I think it was a couple weeks ago. We had our podcast where it's like the teams with like the biggest question marks before the
Hmm.
draft. And the Cardinals were like, I think one of mine. It was either one of yours or one of mine. And it was a matter of the fact that they just kind of were in this like no man's land, right? Where it's just
Right.
like you're just kind of like you're kind of just you just exist, right?
You have no identity. There's no
Right,
like they're good at
right.
this, they're bad at this. Right.
With this draft, I think that their defense like immediately becomes like super interesting. Where it's like, all right, you got guys like real dudes. Walter Nolan could be like future All Pro, like Christian Wilkins. Not, I'm just saying calling him the player comp, but like that level of a defensive tackle, like our Dexter Lawrence type of defensive tackle, a guy who was the former #1 overall recruit coming out of high school, going into Ole Miss, who was seen as the best player in the country at that point in time, and then makes it all the way to the NFL draft, ends up going in the first round, and I think he still has a lot of that capability to be one of the best defensive tackles in the league, truly.
My thing with first five picks too is number one, they address all defense.
Right?
And do you remember how many times last year we do our preview show
Yep.
before every week, and we looked at every team going against the Cardinals, and we're like, well, the Cardinals would have a chance if their defense wasn't so
Right.
cheap. It was like
That's the
every
thing.
week.
Right.
Every week it was like, man, they'd actually probably have a shot here, but I don't trust their defense, so I'm going to take the other team.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the reason we didn't take the Cardinals 90% of last season.
Precisely. And I mean,
And
Will Johnson for me was like the third best player on my board. And the medical thing, like he apparently has some like scary medicals. And here's the thing though, if he's just good for like if he's an borderline all pro level corner for 4 years and then he's just medically retires, it's worth it.
it's
Like,
worth the second round. I agree. It's totally worth it. Or let's say like he's good for 4 years of his career, plays that all. It doesn't
right,
matter when
right,
or where he does it. 3 or 4 years, he plays that all pro level. And then let's say like the first, third and the third of his career is like either, injury, a couple injury
right.
problems here. It's worth it regardless.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right. So where are we sliding the Arizona Cardinals on
I
this
and
board here?
yeah, I think, and even like just given that they from round one to round five, and I'm not even gonna like go into depth about like the round six and round seven picks. The guy they got in the seventh is gonna be like a good special teamer. He was actually at Texas before he was at Nevada. I don't know if you remember that name,
Keaton
but
Crawford.
yeah. But I mean, Denzel Burke was a guy that like last at the beginning of the season, it was like, oh, this guy might even be like a top five corner, and then it just didn't work out that way. Or maybe it was 2 years ago, but like he's a guy who like has proven to play at a high level, and you get him in the fifth round, and so I would argue franchise altering, but if you want to put him in Great Hall, I'm not gonna badger you about it because yes, I do think that like it alters only one side of the ball, not necessarily both sides. So I think I'll put him in the Great
I mean,
Hall. Just
a good quarterback only alters one side of the ball.
yeah, yeah. So maybe
So
we'll
I
just
mean,
put him in Great Hall for now.
well, we can put him in franchise altering for now, and if we see like that we just have too many teams that are just franchise
Yeah,
altering their franchise, we can maybe
yeah.
vote one down.
Okay.
All right. So there go the Arizona Cardinals. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons.
A team of a lot of debate surrounding what they did in this draft. So, and I mean, I
Yes,
think for good reason. They only picked five players. Um, Jalen Walker, who was seen as like possibly could be other than Travis Hunter and maybe Mason Graham, was seen as like maybe the best defender in this draft class. Just flat out defender, whether he plays linebacker or edge, right?
right.
And a lot of people are up in arms about the James Pierce thing, where they trade a future first round pick next year
That's me. I'm one of those.
to the Rams to go and get this guy, right?
Well, they trade a second, a seventh, and a 26 first round pick.
Yeah, and I mean the seventh and the second, like I think that marginally because they did get the third round pick back, like they really kind of just gave the best way to say it is like really marginally they really only gave up the first round pick. It's the way I see it.
Still though, like,
Because they
whew.
ended up getting a fifth round pick back later on, or I'm sorry, not getting a fifth round pick, but like the way the picks worked out. The point is, like, I think it's boils down to they gave up a first round pick for this guy.
Yeah, and like here's the thing: are the Falcons gonna be? Are they gonna win their division?
Man, that's the thing that I've been trying to like figure out because
Because
I'll say this. I put them in passable, which I know a lot of people are probably like, why did you not flunk them out? And I think it's because I like James Pierce as a player, and I think that getting both him and Jalen Walker, they basically are saying like we have had no like who's the last edge player for the Falcons that's been good as a pass rusher? Like Vic Beasley for 1 year, right?
I mean, I'm trying to remember. I know they used to have a couple dogs
They
back
had
in the
like
day.
Jonathan Abraham
Jonathan
back in
Abraham, yeah,
like
that
mid 2000s to late 2000s, but like Vic Beasley was the last guy I can remember, and that was the Super Bowl year. Whenever they went to the Super Bowl, which was what like almost 10 years ago.
2018. So,
Yeah, so 7 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time, and so I
or
think
maybe it
that
was before that. Maybe it was 2016. I don't
yeah,
remember.
and I
Either way,
mean
it
they
doesn't
tried to
matter.
trade for Matt Judon, that didn't work. So like they just feel I feel like they just said we are not gonna like have a bad pass rush regardless of what happens, and like that is the one thing that we've been missing. And like granted, they might not be good against the run, but they're gonna at least be good at pressuring the quarterback.
Well,
So
this is my thing with winning their division because they give up their first next year and they're picking a guy at
yeah,
26, right? And this might be their guy. They might really like this guy, so
I
be
hope
it.
they do.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, it seems like they do. But here's the thing. I don't think the Falcons are going to win their division next year. I really don't.
I don't I think if I had to like gun to my head pick one, yeah, probably not. I don't think they're I think they are a wild card team, but I do not think they win the division.
Right. So that means next year they're picking at, like, let's say they pick at 16. They're giving up a pretty good pick. I don't think
I
they're not going to go
agree.
on to win the Super Bowl. So it's not like you're giving up anywhere between 28 through 32 of a first round pick. You're probably not going to make it to the second round of the playoffs, which is where you're picking at now at 26. So I just think that and the Falcons have a floor of being pretty bad in my
I
eyes. Like,
see.
I think the Falcons could be a 7-win team in a bad case scenario or a 6-win team in a bad case scenario.
I guess maybe if what we saw of Penix last year just isn't what real life is, maybe if he just doesn't, maybe if that was just all kind of a fluke for some reason, which I don't think it was, but if it is, let's just say he regresses, then yeah, that's in the cards. I will say at the very least though, like their defense is going to be significantly better,
I
and
agree.
that's kind of why I put them impassable because I think that offensively, like where what the thing is offensively, like where else could they have picked somebody? Like the line is good. Like I guess you
It's
could have
just it's
at
hard
wide
to give
receiver.
them a great grade when you only have 5 picks.
I agree. I think we can both agree to put them in passable, right?
That's where they're at on my list. So
Okay,
yes,
and
you
they're
can
there
slide
for me
Atlanta into
too.
passable, and they'll probably stay there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all right,
I think that flunking them is a little harsh, but that's just me.
yeah,
Because I also think they got two good safeties, and I mean, like they had a good couple of UDFA's. But other than that, we can go to the Ravens. Ravens were a team that just, I mean, every year it seems like they just pick good players, and
they
that's
have a
it.
good draft like every time they draft.
Yeah.
And they had 11 picks. So that's like another thing too that made it really easy to look
Yeah.
at their draft and go, okay, yeah, they filled some holes.
Yeah. So first,
But go
Malachi
ahead.
Starks, first guy. I mean, just probably the best. Yeah, I wouldn't even say probably. Definitely the best safety in this draft. Like a top 10 player for me personally in this draft, and he falls all the way to 27 because he didn't have a good testing day during the combine and all this stuff. Which like I get it, but whenever you see a guy do this from his freshman year all the way through his junior year at Georgia, right? Of all schools, where it's like he was a starter as a freshman at Georgia.
And he's
That
playing SEC football 90% of the year.
like I've just seen him do it so much that I'm like, this guy is not going to be a bad player. That's just the way I
Right.
feel about it. And so, and to put him next to because he's not the same kind of safety that Kyle Hamilton
Kyle
is.
Hamilton, they're completely different.
Right. Like I love that they have that variability in that back end of their defense. And then they go and pick Mike Green, who off the field issues be, aside, was probably like my top five edges. Probably right there on the fit. Like just as a true pass rusher he was awesome at Marshall. And so I think that getting him in that defense where there's really not like when you look at the depth chart, like there's really not anybody standing in his way from starting immediately at the edge spot, despite the Ravens defense being seen as like really, really good, right?
Right.
it's like Kyle Van Noy and I forget like Odafe Owe, which is fine. Like I think that he would probably, Kyle Van Noy at his age is probably just gonna, at some point be relegated to being the third pass rusher, and Mike Green replaces him. So outside of that, though, I mean, like I'm not gonna sit here and talk about all these other picks they had. I think that given that the Ravens are already kind of a complete team, so to speak.
Hmm.
And I mean, just backfilling all of your other positions with depth throughout the rest of the draft that you see here on our screen. I it sounds a little rich, but like I put them in franchise changing because they got two of the best players in the draft to already make a great team even better.
Okay. I don't hate. I put them in Great Hall because it's literally exactly what they did was go and get a great haul of guys, which is 11 picks that were all solid. I see they went and got a kicker, so Justin Tucker might be
Yeah.
on the market here soon. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's really hard to just argue with their draft whenever, their impact grade for me was like it was an A plus because of those two guys that they
Right.
drafted first. And then the potential. So I gave every team a grade, an instant impact grade of like where does this draft like impact their roster immediately, and then I did a potential grade, which is like 2 years down the road, how do
Right.
these players look like they're going to develop? And I give them an A in that. So if you want to throw them in the franchise altering, that's fine with me. I can give you a little leeway there. If I had
Yeah.
to pick one of the two, I'd pick the Ravens over the Cardinals probably.
Yeah. And one more thing, shout out to Robert Longerbeam, cornerback from Panama City,
Oh,
actually.
yep,
So yeah, hometown kid. I'm gonna put him in franchise alternate for now. Like you said, if we have too many teams up there, I think that like we can't have too many because it just wouldn't make sense to do that. A
it
lot of these
wouldn't.
teams are gonna probably fall into passable or impactful, and then the rest will be on the other categories. But Buffalo Bills, another team that just did a really good job, I think. Maxwell, I will say, first round pick, Maxwell Harrison. Simon loves this guy, and so and like everybody else, as far as like the guys who make our big board between me and Simon and Austin and Ben, I was definitely the lowest on him. Like I thought Maxwell Harrison was fine, but I saw him as more of like a second round pick who has good traits as opposed to a locked and loaded first round corner. And I still think he's a good player. I just think it, for my liking, a little bit of a reach. But like, who am I to say because I'm just some guy on the couch? Um, Other than that, though, I mean, like T.J. Sanders, one of my favorite defensive tackles in the draft. Landon Jackson, good value at that point in the draft for an edge. Like, have you? I don't. Did you look at Deion Walker's measurements? Like, have you seen how big this dude is?
No.
Do you want to guess how big he is?
He's not 421
He's
pounds. He's
not
less than
Desmond
that.
Watson, no. But
I'm gonna guess he's 360
he's
and
not 360. But
because that would be like really freaking big.
no, he's not 360.
Is he a 300? Is he in the 300
He's
club?
he's in the 300s. He's 330. But how tall do you think he is?
6'3".
6'7", 330 pounds
Jeez
at
Louise.
DT. But the problem is he's not really a great player. He's just kind of like
He's
a
six
big
six
guy.
345
Oh, okay. So I had
on
different measurements.
that's on like just Google.
But either
Either
way,
way, massive
big, just
unit.
massive dude, like tush push stopper kind of guy. But the problem is he doesn't really know how to play football exactly. So,
Oh,
so
well,
if he can learn how to play football, that'll be a great pick. And then like I like Dorian Strong and Chase Lunt as like late round bets at valuable positions like corner and tackle because they can kind of afford to do that, given that they're kind of in the same position as Baltimore. Interesting enough, where it's just like they already had a good team.
yep. And then yeah, and let's talk about the trade down there as well. Can
Oh
we
yes,
add
yeah,
that
we could
in
talk
as
about
well? Okay.
we could talk about this a little bit. Like they trade up to get T.J. Sanders, and they basically what they did is they like traded up like 14, 15 spots, and then they just like traded back a couple spots to their other picks, which is like honestly for a guy like T.J. Sanders, if you like him that much, I'm perfectly fine with because they ended up with fine players as a result. Like it was a pretty even trade, I would say, like all the way around. So, because I even like it for the Bears side too.
I
I'm gonna
just
go
like to
ahead.
mention it because it happened. I like to make
Yeah,
sure we add that into the equation here.
agreed.
Where do you have the Bills
I'm gonna
located
put
on
them
here?
in I'm gonna put them in Great Hall, just given that I like the players they picked. Even if like the only thing I didn't love was the Maxwell Harrison going that early, but like given the traits, like he had the fastest 40 time of all the corners and everything. Like I'm not gonna fault them for picking a guy like that.
So they are the second top team in my passable category, which is a couple drops
Okay,
lower
so
than yours.
let's put him in
Because I
impactful.
because I didn't love the draft, honestly.
Okay, you want to settle on impactful for now,
Yeah, we can
since it's
put
in
him in
between.
the. I think yeah, we meet in the middle there.
I
That
think
works for me.
with the Maxwell reach for me, I think that's probably a better place to put them. Carolina Panthers. I think that this is one of the more interesting drafts in my opinion because this is a team that needed two things. They needed to fix the defense and they needed to get a weapon for Bryce Young.
Hmm.
And I think they kind of did that.
Right. So I agree with you. I agree. They got rid of Brian Burns, and I think they're just like, okay, well, let's go get two edge guys in the second and third and hope one of those guys pan out. That's something they're really missing. That's something they've obviously covered. Getting Tet at 8, I think, is like not a bad pick whatsoever. He was probably not one of the top guys they were looking at, considering they didn't know if he was going to be there or not at 8. But I think it's a good pick, it's a good weapon. They The one thing that kills me about this is the first fourth round pick.
Yes, that one I did not get it.
Like you have Chuba Hubbard who you drafted, who's you just signed his extension, right?
Right,
I think it's his
right.
fifth year option or
Yep,
whatever. Just extended him, and then you brought in Rico Dowdle. So you have two running backs who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year,
yep,
and then you're doing great. Everything's going right, right? Like
yep.
the kid's riding the bike. He's got the pedals going. You let go of the seat. He's 10 steps away doing it all by himself, and then he crashes and burns right there for me
Yeah.
in the fourth round. And it's just like, oh, that's an ugly pick. I don't think he's a bad running back. I just don't understand where he fits in the running back room,
I
even
don't I
with
don't either.
Jonathan
Like
Brooks. Like,
I was not I didn't understand why they took him so early was the thing to me because I thought that Etienne was a guy who would go in like like late fifth round.
well, here's the thing is you have four picks in the next two rounds between the fourth and
Right,
fifth round, and you take them with the first one you got.
right, right.
Like,
At a position in the draft where I would have to look at the board again, but I'm pretty sure there was some valuable like if they wanted to go even if they wanted to go like offensive line depth or like corner, right? There were probably guys there they could have selected that would have been like, okay, that's a good pick. Given just how this board fell, because I remember the fourth round specifically, I was like, there are a ton of guys here that could be immediate starters for teams just based off what we think of them as prospects. So, but like going to your point about the edges, right? Scorton and Numan Mielen, right?
mhm,
To the fact that you had basically the ghosts of Jadavian Clowney left, right, and nobody
right.
else on the edge, and then you go and get two guys, one of which was like Scorton was. A lot of people were kind of lower on him, but what happened is he like gained weight at Texas A&M, like 30 pounds or something crazy like that, and then he dropped weight after the fact. So he was just carrying a lot more, so he was a lot less explosive. But now he's back to like playing at 250 like he was at Purdue. And if you're gonna watch him play at Purdue, he looks like a totally different player than he did at Texas A&M. And I don't know why that is that they like made him gain weight, but it definitely affected his play. And then Umam Yellen was really good at Ole Miss after transferring from UF before that. So I think that immediately those two guys are going to start. Lathan Ransom, one of my favorite values, considering like we saw him play for Ohio State and play an important role in that defense on the back end, and they really need a lot of help in the secondary, anyways. Um, I put them in Great Hall personally, and they did trade up for Scorton, but even then, like I don't mind what they gave up to go up and get Scorton because they only moved up like 6 picks. So
Right.
I put them in Great Hall. Like I said, what did you classify them in?
So they are the second team in my impactful, but we can put them in Great Hall. That's
Put them in
okay
there
with
for
me.
now. We can move them down if we need to. But I do
No,
agree
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
the Etienne pick was like one of the weirdest picks in my opinion, like of any team that
Hmm.
took just took running backs at that point in the draft. Chicago Bears. Ben Johnson had his hands all over this draft, I think,
Yep.
because they come out to take Colson Loveland in the first round. They come out and take Luther Burden, one of my favorite players in the draft, in the second round, which terrifies me as a Vikings fan because this offense is going to be really hard to stop. So, um, outside of that, I mean, they take Shamar Turner, really talented DT in the second. Ozzie Drapillo. I'm not going to act like I'm a line expert, but he's a huge dude, but has some like fine tuning that needs to happen. And then some of the like later picks I was fine with. Kyle Monungai was probably my favorite one because he's a really good running back in the seventh round. But outside of that, um, what did you think of their draft? And I know they traded up or traded down in that same Buffalo trade that we referred to. So what did you think of theirs?
So their draft was, I gave it an A- on
Okay,
my list.
okay,
So they had a good draft because, and I think it was the main reason is because Ben Johnson just has his hands all over it, kind of like what you're saying. Here's the thing that confuses me though. It's like, okay, some of these players, like, where do they fit? It's a lot of like, okay, Colson Loveland, they took the tight end over Tyler Warren, which I don't really hate it. I think Colson Loveland was a better tight end, especially for the scheme that they might be looking. But now they have two tight ends in Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland that are probably good because Cole Kmet was, I wouldn't say a favorite target, but one of the more comfortable targets for Caleb Williams last year.
yep.
You have Romo Dunze, who was kind of invisible for most of last year.
After being like the 10th overall pick, yeah,
Yeah, right. And then you have DJ Moore. I think my biggest problem with the Bears, I don't think they have the right quarterback, but that's just a whole nother thing.
right.
But
However, I will say this: we will almost certainly know after this year whether they had the right
yeah,
quarterback or
well,
not.
and yeah, it's time for Caleb Williams to put his money where his mouth is because it's time to nut up and play some football because you
Correct.
have no excuse after this draft. But I just think it was a really good draft. I don't think there was anything that was really like, wow, that was a really great move to do. I think it was all just good. So I gave it
Yeah.
an A-.
I'm gonna go ahead and put them in Great Hall then because, like, I mean,
Hmm.
the first and second round picks alone, I think were enough for me to say you got two of my favorite players in the draft, and I think this immediately upgrades an offense that was just awful last year for a lot
I'll
of years.
also say this, like in some of my grade, I wouldn't say grades, but in this little chart that we're making, the one that I've made individually, some of this stuff also has to do with their free agency offseason. Like some of that kind of lumps into the draft for me because
Right.
they wouldn't get this player if they didn't go out and get this guy in free agency type thing.
I
So
get what you're saying, where it's like it dictates what the team needs. Right.
like yeah, like
Right.
this team went out and got an offense. They went and got Joe Tooney in the offseason. So it makes sense for them not to take a guy in the first
Yeah.
two rounds to fill that void. Like it, it's so it because of those acquisitions, they changed these draft picks, which
Right.
cause an effect. So
Right.
yeah, the Bears can go under Great Hall and we can move on to the Cincinnati Bengals, whose draft I did not love. I don't know how you feel about it.
It was, I'll say it was like fine. And the thing is, whenever you're talking about drafts, like fine is not necessarily a reigning endorsement. it's like fine means like, all right, this is probably one of like the bottom eight drafts or so, right? Um, Here's the reason why I'm kind of like it's fine. I think that they did like they kind of ate their vegetables a little bit, which they needed to do desperately, right? Like you sign T Higgins, you sign Chase, you sign Burrow, like that's the like you know I don't want to say it, like that's the flame mignon, so to speak, right? And at some point you just kind of need the starches, and I think that's what they ended up doing is kind of just saying like, all right, we're not going to be flashy and take the skill players that we would love to do, like they could have said, you know what, screw it. We can take Mason Taylor in the first round, tight end from, LSU, and really like just take this thing to a whole nother level, right?
Right.
They didn't do that. They took Shamar Stewart, which very controversial like player as far as what people think he's going to be, whether he's going to succeed or not, because you've probably heard this too. Like he didn't have a lot of sacks in college. He had like I think it was like 1.5 sacks last season. But he had like one of the highest pressure numbers of any defensive end in college. And he's got all these great testing numbers. He's basically just like a super athlete, but didn't have the actual sacks to back it up, right?
Right.
So he's more of I don't want to say an idea, but he is kind of more of an idea than a finished product, which I don't mind them taking him. But the problem is that if you're not going to have Trey Hendrickson on the team, which it doesn't seem like they're going to still, right?
Right.
I feel like you need a more finished product coming like immediately in the short term, right? Because your window is now to win,
Yeah,
like
your
these
window
next three
is
seasons,
now to, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's 3 seasons, and after that, your window it shuts quick.
right?
It does not take much.
Right. So if Shamar Stewart doesn't become like the version that everybody thinks he will be until year three, like that just kind of doesn't help you out a lot, truthfully. The other picks, like I didn't mind them. Like Demetrius Knight's really athletic, a little bit of an older prospect, but like he's fast as hell at linebacker. Fairchild is gonna start at some point immediately, probably for them. And then Barrett Carter, I actually do like a lot of linebacker in the fourth, but it's just like, did they really do a lot to get significantly better? Like I would have liked to see them take a corner instead of Demetrius Knight, where they
Yeah,
took him.
well, so that's what I was thinking too, is like one of my notes is that this linebacker class is kind of weak to take two linebackers like that
Right.
whenever there's other needs. Now, if this linebacker class was just like outstanding and it's a year where, hey, I don't know if we'll be able to spend a fourth to get or a second to get a guy that's going to make an instant impact, then yes. But I don't know if these two guys are impactful enough to take them where they took them
Yeah.
for me. Um, I put the Bengals in a disappointed category. Now, I feel like they can go in the passable.
Nah, we'll put him in disappointed. I think I'm okay with that because somebody's got to be. We got to disappoint somebody, right? Like,
Somebody's got to disappoint us.
right.
Somebody's got to be.
We can't be cowards and just put everybody in the passable and not offend anybody.
You can't give A's to the whole class, you know.
Right, right. That's kind of like how I feel about it too. I feel like whenever you do draft grades, a lot of people end up with it's like, oh, a bunch of like, you
The
know,
worst person's a C minus, and it's
A
like, okay, you
minus.
can't
Yeah,
do
it's like,
that.
okay, that's not how that works.
Yeah,
So,
right.
all right, Cleveland Browns. They did a
Okay.
lot, and um, we don't have to necessarily talk about like the Shador thing. I think that that's been talked about like a lot at this point,
I
and
think we can talk about it on the draft side of things. I don't think we have to talk about it on like the media side of things, like you're
no,
probably
no,
thinking.
no, but
But we can talk about how they took a third and a fifth. Yes, that's something that
yes,
definitely needs to be talked
yeah.
about.
Okay, the first thing they traded down from number two. They traded out of Travis Hunter, and they got an extra first round pick next year from the Jags, which honestly,
I think
that
that's a
could be
win.
that could be like gold because the Jags, historically speaking, not saying that the Jags are going to suck. I actually do like the Jags this upcoming year, but historically speaking, that's been a pretty good bet.
Well, they're playing in a harder conference. They're playing in a division where I don't think they're the best team in their division.
Probably not. I think the Texans are
The
probably
Texans are probably, yeah, just a little bit better, right?
yeah,
So you're looking at a top 15 pick, in my opinion, like at worst case scenario. So
right.
I like that. They also I don't like that they took. I mean, I do like that they took Mason Graham, but I don't. Um,
I
I'm
guess the
kind of
question would be,
50-50 on it.
what would you have them rather done? Like, would you rather them just stayed and picked Travis Hunter than getting that additional first round pick back?
I think you could possibly trade back and maybe talk the Giants into maybe wanting Travis Hunter possibly and getting Abdul Carter and adding some value or
I think I get what
I
you're
don't
saying,
know.
but that's
I don't think Travis Hunter I think it's fine. It's not that Mason Graham is like a bad pick and
no,
like I would take Mason Graham and a first rounder over Travis Hunter for the Browns franchise
right.
probably any day of the week. But at the same time, I don't know, man. Travis Hunter is like a big question mark. So I also understand like keeping that risk just out of the building as well, because you don't know how long he's going to last. You don't know if he's good
Right,
on both
right.
sides of the ball, at what level, this, that, and the other. Like, is it weird to say like Cleveland just go take Ginty at 5? Is that weird to say?
It's not like the worst thing
Like, get some jersey sales, get some tickets,
because they
like
did
pick
need a
up a.
running back, but I mean, whenever you look at what they ended up doing at running back, I think I like this better a little bit because Judkins, as much as he's not Ginty, I mean, he's Judkins is pretty good.
No, he is, but I think like it's the same drop off from like college football standpoint. If like Sony Michel would have went to the Browns instead of Nick Chubb, we saw how that kind of panned out. I think it takes a specific type of running back to play in Cleveland, which is like that power football. Like I can take 90 hits a game and be fine. And I think Gene T is one of those.
I gotcha. So for you, it was like maybe if they went GT and then took DT in the second, as opposed to like maybe they take TJ Sanders instead, right? Just as an example.
Just an
Just
example. Yeah,
but like
sure.
you would have liked that better than what they ended up doing, which is fine. That's not a like ridiculous point or like way to view it. I don't
And
think
I honestly
because
think like if you're not going to trade out, dude, honestly, for the Cleveland Browns, like Abdul Carter's the pick at two.
I totally agree with that. Yeah,
Like I don't
even
think
over
they had any
Jackson.
business. I don't think they had any business drafting Travis Hunter.
No.
That's not really why I'm like, oh, why'd you trade back?
Yeah.
It's really just like, why'd you trade back to take the DT, which is fine. I mean, you know, we'll see what happens. But let's talk about the third and fifth round thing because that's where I
Yeah.
find the biggest problem with this Cleveland Browns draft.
Yeah. So they take Dylan Gabriel in the third, who I think it's a little early for Dylan Gabriel, and I'm like one of the bigger Dylan Gabriel supporters, considering he was my guy at one point. And then they take Shador in the fifth. Everybody, it's been talked about a lot. So I I think it's just a matter of you're creating a situation where you're setting yourself up for like to me, it would have made more sense for them to go Shador Sanders in the third, which I know it sounds like semantics, right? Of like
Hmm.
swapping the two players, but I think it makes a big difference when it comes to quarterbacks
Right.
because it's all about like the mentality that specific player goes into the quarterback room with or the organization with. Like Shador is going to, and I'm not saying this just because, but it does seem like if you were going to take him, why didn't you just take him in the third round?
I don't see that's the thing. I think I do think that the honest look of this was like, oh, let's get Dylan Gabriel. We think he's probably a better fit for what we're looking for, right? So they picked Dylan Gabriel. But then Shador's still there in the fifth, and they're like, man, like Shador wasn't that much worse to us than Dylan Gabriel was, and we suck at picking quarterbacks. I say we just take two, and one of them maybe, if we're lucky, one of
You
them
know
will
what's
work
funny
out.
is like
And
they're doing the thing that a lot of people have said to do, where it's just like just pick two of them, and then at least one of them should be good.
well, and then at the end of the day, too, if you look at it this way, like let's say in 2 years from now, Shador Sanders is starting for the Cleveland Browns. Or let's say 2 years from now, Dylan Gabriel's starting for the Cleveland Browns. It won't be talked about like as far as remember when they drafted Shador, it might be talked about a little bit. But if Shador's a starting quarterback in 2 years, a, th- a third round and fifth round equal out to a first round.
I that's part. I
And
would say
some.
that's I
Like
would say
and some.
that's definitely less than
No,
what the
yeah,
third
yeah,
round
but
would be.
you get what I'm saying. Like maybe not even a first round. Let's
Right,
say
right.
Shador is
Value
like a
wise,
second or third round
right.
quarterback.
You're saying if they resolve, like if by picking these two guys they solve the quarterback position, it's well worth the picks because
Right.
it's the value that you're getting out of that is great. Which I will say, like despite what it like the road that it took to get there, ultimately I give them credit for at least taking them whenever they were still on the board.
Well, if we would have looked at this draft, if we would have looked at this without any picks or rounds or anything else beside it and just said, hey, this is who Cleveland ends up with at the end of the draft,
Yep.
you know how many people would have said, how in the hell did they get Mason Graham and Shador
Yeah.
Sanders?
And Quidshot Judkins and like yeah, this whole thing,
People,
right?
yeah, right. So, like, if you look at it that way too, kind of like what you said, it's an interesting path, but it doesn't really matter how you get there.
Right. There's a couple of
Uh,
teams that did that weirdly in this draft.
right,
Like,
right. But like, number one, no one thought Shador would fall to a fifth,
right.
but that would just be like one of those things where if you looked at this list without anything beside of it, you'd be like, well, they had a really, honestly, we'd probably say that's a great haul but
Yeah.
now it's not. I agree with where you're sticking them in the impactful area because I think the next year first round pick really does it for me
Yeah. Now, do you think that that's the right
overall.
place for them, for us?
Yeah, yeah. So I put them in the WTF are they doing section on mine just because I didn't know. No, hold on. No, hold on. Because I didn't know. It was more of like a, hey, like, what are we doing drafting two quarterbacks? Now we've talked it through. On my list, though, I do have three arrows pointed up, so that puts them in the impactful section.
Okay.
So like
I
that's
think
where I
think
think their
that's where
full
I ended up
draft
too.
grade is.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's
But
where I ended up.
so my WTF are they doing? I don't have a single team that actually belongs there. I
I
just put
have
three teams there that I was very confused on a couple of their picks
yeah,
or why they went the route they did. So,
yeah.
all right. Well, this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah. Dallas Cowboys. Honestly, Parker, like I don't mean to get you excited. Like these might have been the best first, second, and third round picks. Regardless, like even if I didn't agree with Tyler Booker at 12, like I thought he was probably like if you swapped Tyler Booker and Devin Ezraku and just told me that Ezraku went at the 12th pick and Booker went at the second round pick, I would have been like, that's an amazing draft. Good job, Cowboys. Like
So
I would have not had a problem with it.
I was texting Donovan specifically about, well, he texted me about Shamar James as soon as we drafted Shamar
Yeah,
James, but
yeah.
he was huge on our second round pick. He was like, that might be one of the best picks of the draft in the second
Ezraku
round.
is a dude. Like he's a little like undersized, so to speak, for like the position relative to like what people look for. But I want to say like he like led the ACC in sacks this past year. He was also like I think throughout his college years like had the most sacks of any edge in his starts like per game. I think it was like 1.3 sacks per game or something crazy like that, which is just a lot for a college
Right.
player. Um, I think that that's plug and play your Demarcus Lawrence replacement. Like no question about it. He's going to play from day one, be good. And then your third round pick might have been like one of my favorite picks of the draft in general. This guy's awesome. He tore his ACL in like the second week of the season at ECU, and before that, I mean, even the year before, he's built like nobody. I was talking to Dad about this the other day. Whenever we were watching the third day of the draft. I was talking about it. You guys have never had a corner that's built like this. He is built like because he's built like Tariq Woolen, where he's like basically an ex wide receiver build, but he's playing corner.
Yeah, you talking about Trayvon Diggs?
Trayvon is not built like that. Like
Well,
not
I'm just saying Trayvon Diggs used to be a wide
no
receiver, went to Alabama as a wide receiver,
right,
and then Nick Saban
but
said, "You're going to play
but
corner,"
I
and
mean like hold
he's
on.
known for that. I was
Let's
just
just
saying.
see. Siobhan, we're gonna look at the measurements because I can tell you right now they are not the same size.
I'm not
Okay.
saying they're built. I know. I don't mean that. I was just the way that you described it is like, yeah, that literally sounds like Trayvon Diggs.
So Savon Revel is 6'2", 194. And well, they're both 6'2", but I think it's more of like the length that I'm referring to. Like as far as just the how just rangy Revel is because he like I said, like the closest measurables comp is Tariq Woolen, and Tariq Woolen was like built like nobody else as corner. Um, so I guess my point is that like this is just unlike any corner you guys have really had from a length and like size standpoint. Tyler Booker is going to start from day one, right? Just
Right.
out Zach Martin in Tyler Booker, and then I mean Jaden Blue, I don't really hate. Like he's just kind of going to be a part time like change of pace back, which is fine because he's fast as hell.
Well, here's
But
the thing. So one thing I don't like is we got zero wide receiver.
that was the one thing that I was like, man, I really like what you guys did, but you did not draft a single pass catcher, which I was
N-
like, you got to
No.
draft one of them.
Well, and that's the thing with me is like, dude, we've done nothing in free agency. We did nothing in this draft. And like Jalen Tolbert's not a wide receiver, too. Flournoy's
No,
not a wide receiver, too. Brandon Cooks is no longer on the team. The Cowboys don't have a wide receiver, too.
no, they don't.
It's just non-existent. And like this was the perfect draft, in my opinion, to take. I like you said, dude. Like we did a really good job with 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And I don't hate 5. I really don't. But like I hate that there is no pass catcher on this list whatsoever.
Yeah, and even like on day 3, whenever I was at Dad's house and we had the draft on, and like these last 4 picks, we were there for them, like all from pick 28 of the six all the way to the end, and it was like, all right, here comes a wide receiver. Oh, okay, maybe the next one. It was just every pick. It was like, hey, what wide receivers on the board? And it was like, I mean, it was slim pickings at that point, but there were still guys like Restrepo was still there
Sorry,
who ended up
we got
what
an undrafted free agent
well,
from
whoop de
Oregon,
doo. Like
actually. Yeah.
I'm not gonna hold. I mean, Holden's athletic, but that's about it. Okay.
Mm.
Anyways, I'm gonna put them in. I'm leaning towards one of these two, impactful or Great Hall, depending.
So I put them in Great Hall because I
I'm
do
gonna
think they had a really good draft.
I also think that's where
I
I'm
don't
at.
think it was a bad draft. I think they did fine.
Yeah,
Um,
I
all
think
right,
that's where I
we
ended
can
up
move
too.
on.
Yeah. So
Yep.
Great Hall, Cowboys, good job. I will say, if there's one thing the Cowboys do well, they draft well all the time.
Yeah, that's
Um,
because they suck in free agency. They don't have a choice.
all right, Denver Broncos. Uh the first two picks I really like. Next two picks are kind of okay. Actually, really, it's just that third round pick that bothers me. Everything else is fine. But Jahdae Barron immediately is going to start in the nickel next to Pat Surtain, and it's going to be awesome. Like this defense was already really good, and it just got a lot better. And then Sean Payton gets his running back, right?
Right.
And
I go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, this
He
is
gets you
not
your
a,
running back.
it's my running back, but more importantly, in regards to like the running backs that Sean Payton has drafted before the third round, or I think it's either the third round or like pick 70, it's something like that, like some kind of benchmark, right? It's four guys, and I'm sure you could probably name them because they're all the good ones. So it's Reggie Bush,
Yep.
it's Mark Ingram,
Yep.
it's Alvin Kamara,
Yep.
and it's RJ Harvey.
Oh,
So
RJ Harvey's okay.
he's
The
the fourth
fourth. Yeah.
one.
Yep. Okay.
So given that, he's going to get the ball a lot, and he's probably going to be good. Just not trying to like fight for my guy here, but given the history of Sean Payton running backs and that kind of draft capital, it's a good sign. Um,
So dad told me he really liked this guy and was like, I would love for the Cowboys to get RJ Harvey in the third round. Like I would love to get him in the third round.
if you never watched him, I'll send you a video of his highlights. He
I
he
looked him
based
up after dad said that. So
he was the
I have
whole
seen.
UCF offense. Like we could not do anything on offense if it wasn't for RJ Harvey. Like we
Now,
started running Wildcat because our quarterback sucked that bad.
here's where I'm at with the first round pick. I love the first round pick.
Yeah, I do too.
Really good pick. I kind of but like going back and looking at it, it turned out okay. I kind of wanted them to swap spots though. Like I really thought that they would go
Maybe they're a
first round
trade down
running back,
candidate.
first round running back, second round corner, or trade down. Yeah, because I feel like they were handcuffed to pick that pick.
Well, I
I
think
feel
it
like
was
they
a
were just
situation.
like, go
Maybe
ahead.
it was like this guy's too good to pass up, kind of
Well,
thing.
that's what I mean by handcuffed. It's like, that's not what we really wanted to draft here. We probably really wanted a running back. Like they could have ended up with Omarion Hampton at 20, but they were like, I guess we can just put our running back needs aside and take the guy that's the most valuable. And like you said, like he was matching up alongside with Pat Surtain, so that's gonna be just locks. But
Yeah.
that's my only thing about this draft. I know you didn't like the third round pick, but like that's the real only complaint I have about the Broncos draft. Everything else looked good.
Yeah, and I mean there wasn't like a ton. I mean like they traded down with the Panthers in that scored and trade, and there was a
Hmm.
couple other moves they made. But ultimately speaking, like I think they did a pretty good job. I would probably put them in the either in impactful or great haul. I'm not gonna like wherever you want to put them between those two. I'm fine with.
They're in my passable, so I went. You can throw them in impactful. I feel like I was a lot more harsh than you were on these. Sometimes, like
You
for
know
some
what?
of them.
You know what? Given the fact that the third round pick, like yeah, I'm gonna put them in passable. I'm gonna that third round pick really pissed me off because that guy is not that good.
But I will agree with you. It is impactful. Like they did,
Yeah,
they did impact their cornerback room. They did impact their running back room after losing Javante Williams and having to find a different option there. So
yeah,
I do think it was impactful. I just don't think it was like a great haul
yeah. I guess
necessarily.
relative to like if we're putting them with teams like the Bills and the Browns, that's not the same kind of impact. So yeah, we'll put them in passable. All right, next team because we're gonna try and keep this thing moving. Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
I was a little confused by this draft. Like, I like Tyleik Williams. He's a good run. He's a good DT. He's definitely like a Dan Campbell guy. Same thing with Tate Ratledge, and Miles Frazier too. But like, the thing for me was they traded up and gave away two third round picks to get Isaac Tesla. So just two third rounders next year. Bye bye. Which I mean, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a guy that like I didn't even really have a whole lot of knowledge of like what he is as a player. I know he tested really well at the combine, but like he didn't have a ton of production at Arkansas. He's definitely like a traits bet, and you're just betting on him developing into something. But I do not love. I feel like that was just lighting not just one, but not two, but three picks on fire essentially by doing that. And I kind of have to put them in like either passable or disappointing based on that.
So mm,
Probably
with
passable because I do like the first two players they took, but that third round pick situation was brutal.
well for the Lions for me, it's a couple things. So one, they have had probably the best last 3 years of drafting of any team,
Yeah,
in my opinion, as far as just like pure. I want to say since 2021, since they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown. Since that draft, I mean, you look at the heavy hitters they've added from Jameer Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like their whole roster is built through their drafting process.
right.
So the Lions overall in the recent past, A plus on drafting. Now, this year, no Ben Johnson in the building, no Aaron Glenn in the building. So you don't really have their what they like, what they want type deal.
Yeah,
This is going to be the true test of how much that really impacts the building. I
agreed.
think. Like you look at they've drafted so well with those two guys, and I'm not saying that those guys draft and handpick those players. I know there's a lot of other things that go into drafting a player, but they do have a say so in what they want and what they're looking for and what traits they like, what guys they like and don't like for what reasons. And this draft is gonna be the test of that. Now, on the other side of thing though, dude, this is also like another case of what the Bills did. Like they're already a good team. You're adding a few pieces here and there. Like it's not as harsh of a grade as they might deserve on what they did. Like at the same time, they're a good team and they're just bulking up in certain positions that they see fit.
I think I agree with that. Like I said, the it's just that third round pick that I really had a problem with. Everything else I thought was fine. So I'm. Do you have them in impactful?
Yeah, but we can put them in passable because I think passable, it's like, okay, it was a fine draft. It wasn't
Yeah.
it's not gonna be an instant impact. You're not gonna have any like day one starters necessarily that are just like,
I mean, Tyreek will start
Ty
immediately,
Leaf will
but
start. Yeah, but other than that, you don't have any guys that are just gonna come out and make a big difference right off the rip. So,
yeah,
all right. So
we
yeah,
have
there's the
the
Lions.
we have the Green Bay Packers next, the hometown draft host, so to speak, and it was fine. This is probably a passable for me too because Matthew Golden, I'm not a big fan of him. Like I just thought he was a second round wide receiver. Not to hate on Texas or anything. I thought it was good, but I didn't see first round receiver in what I watched him this year. I thought it was like okay, I thought he would like go in that like Jaden, maybe being like the Jaden Higgins tier of wide receiver or Trey Harris, where like those guys ended up in the second round. Um, and he ends up going in the first, which is fine, I guess. But it also was like the first time in like 23 years that the Packers took a wide receiver in the first round, which is crazy to think that. Um, and aside from that, I mean, the rest of the draft, I like Savion Williams. I'm actually a lot higher on him than a lot of people. Um, I wonder if they're going to be able to use him. I hope they will because he's basically like you remember Ty Montgomery.
Hmm.
He's basically Ty Montgomery, where he's like this weird hybrid wide receiver running back.
Yeah, where he just like, yeah, I remember Ty Montgomery became the starting running back for
Yeah,
Green Bay for like a whole season. He was like the biggest fantasy pickup of the year.
I wouldn't be
So
surprised. Like, let's just say Josh Jacobs gets hurt, they might just stick him back there and say like, "Hey, play running back."
hey, you're
Like,
gonna play
not
running
kidding you.
back
Yeah,
now that AJ Dillon's gone too.
yeah.
So here's my issue with their drafts. You just said it. Like you haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round in 23 years.
Yeah.
In those 23 years, you've made a few Super Bowl appearances. You've had a couple seasons with an MVP quarterback. And actually, right now, you have the more wide receiver abundance than you've probably ever had in your organization
Arguably.
because you've had your Jordy Nelsons, you've had your, Greg Jennings, your what's it called, Devontae Adams. But like right now, you have Jaden Reed, you have Dontavian Wicks, you have Christian Watson, you have like 4 or 5 guys that are very equal level, all really good catchers, all do a really good job. And then you turn around and spend a first and third round pick on more wide receivers when that's what you already have. Like you still can't decide who your number one guy is, and you pick up Matthew Golden, who's literally a spitting image of three wide receivers that you already have on your team.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that. I just think that Matthew Golden is one of the worst teams that he could have gone to as far as like being an impact on day one or like making a difference.
Yeah. Until like those, because I don't know the contract like situations when the other guys run out, but like until a couple of those guys get out of the building, yeah, I agree with you. Um, the only other thing I'll say is that like I kind of didn't love that they basically they took a corner in the seventh round. I'm not counting that, but like they didn't take a single corner, and they have this. First off, they Eric Stokes, I don't think is on the team anymore. They spent the first round pick on him. I think he's out of the building. And then in addition to that, they have this whole Jair Alexander thing that still people think that he might be off the team by the time the season rolls around, right? So if that's the case, then like who's playing corner for this team is kind of what
Well,
I'm wondering.
those are my only two notes on this is that they're both thumbs down in my notes is
Yeah.
that wide receivers are abundant already. You spent a first and a third, and you addressed the D line with three picks, and you just neglected the cornerback room completely. You had
Yeah.
zero corner picks, and like you said, like I'm not counting the seventh round. Like that guy's not going to come and play corner anytime
Sounds
soon.
like this is where we're ending up then.
Yeah, they were actually in my what WTF are you doing?
They're close to it.
I put them in passable. So my bottom team in passable. So you can throw them in disappointed. That works for me.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to go there.
Yeah.
So definitely Green Bay belongs. And we can move on to the Houston Texans,
Yeah.
who eh, they they like guys that start their name with JAY a lot.
And went to Iowa State and
Yeah,
USC.
Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Jalen Smith, and Jalen Reed.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about all these Jalen's and where they stack up.
I will say, I did not expect them to go receiver as aggressive as they did early in the draft. However, I don't hate it
Can you scroll
because,
down to their trade for us real quick?
yeah,
Can you
yeah, I
just scroll
can.
down to that so we can take a look at
Yeah.
that? Just while you're talking, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't hate that they went and, well, first off, they traded up or traded back from the first round. We should probably
Hmm.
mention that.
Yeah, that's
This
the one
was
I'm talking about.
part of the Jackson Dart trade. They traded back to 34, which is where they were, that's where the Giants were picking. They end up getting Higgins there, which I really don't mind. I think it's a fine pick at that point in the draft. And then they get a third. The thing is, like, they only got like two extra third round picks, which I was surprised by because, like, for instance, the Falcons right before them traded a future first round pick for the Rams pick. And then right after that, it was like, oh, yeah, we only got 2/3 to move up for the Giants to move up to get a court, which is great work by the Giants. We'll get to that. Like, even if
Yeah.
I, which we'll talk about them in a minute, but I expected them to get a little bit more from that. And then they worked around it and like used one of those thirds to move back up to take Ariante Ursary, who's a good second round tackle prospect, big body guy from Minnesota that just kind of needs some technique stuff figured out. But this is a Texans team that we knew they had to take offensive line at some point, especially tackle, considering the Laramie Tunsil trade. And so,
Well, that's what I was thinking. So, how do you feel about this second round pick? Do you like this guy a lot? Like, do you think?
I think it's a fine bet on a guy who has a ton of traits. Like I liked this probably better than
Do you
some of
like
the.
it better than taking one at 25?
Yeah, yeah, I think I do. Given that they were able to work around the draft and like get capital back, considering that they had already kind of committed to just rebuilding the offensive line. But the thing that, like I said, the thing that surprised me the most was the commitment to getting the pass catchers like very much like notably improved. And sneakily, I think it was kind of in retrospect, it's like, you know what, they kind of did need these guys because Christian Kirk, not a bad receiver, but like he's just been injured all the time. Tank Dell obviously injured all the time. And whenever it came down to the end of the season last year, it was Nico Collins and nobody else.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I totally agree. I'm surprised in the fashion they did it. Kind of like you're saying, I'm surprised they went wide receiver, tackle, wide receiver again.
yeah, but
But
I will say, like, I think Jalen Noel could have gone in the second round and they get him in the third is good value. That's why I like don't really mind it because that's a guy who should have gone early in the draft. Given his skill set, like that's a guy that the Todd McShay's, like every draft show that you listen to, everybody fell in love with this guy, and he's going to be an awesome inside, like in the slot wide receiver because of how twitchy and quick he is, and how much he's a ball winner at the slot, given that he's not this like big build X guy like Jaden Higgins is. So,
Right.
Woody Marks, I will say also, like he's a pass catching back, and Joe Mixon didn't really do that a whole lot. So he does provide something different that they don't have in the offense. I like the only thing I can knock them for is like they only took one offensive lineman. That's it.
That was my biggest thing is that they traded out of the first when needing O line and then
Yeah,
didn't address that outside of the second round.
yeah.
All right. Well, I put them in impactful.
I think impactful is where I would lie to. I think that they do a
Okay.
good job, but they could have obviously addressed the line a little bit more, considering that's like the number one thing that everybody was like they have to do this in the draft. Um,
Right.
all right, so okay, yeah, no, notable UDFA's. Okay, the Colts. This was kind of like one of the more vanilla drafts of the whole thing, and it's probably because Tyler Warren. Like I feel like we just mocked him there, or every mock had him going to the Colts for like 2 months,
Well,
right?
yeah, and I'll say they got him at max value at
Yeah,
14. Like they
yeah.
got the best tight end you're going to get at 14.
Absolutely. I
And
agree with
probably
you.
any draft, in my opinion. Like there's a lot of drafts you go back. Like there's no other tight end you're going to get that kind of player straight out of college
Hmm.
at that pick. Now I had an issue with their draft though. Like this team needs defensive backs.
Yeah. I mean, they signed a couple in free agency, but that doesn't mean that it's a total resolution, so to speak.
Corner specifically. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're looking into like, okay, what are we going to do after this season?
Right.
Don't you think like, a seventh round pick or a sixth round pick or, I mean, I guess I see they're taking a quarterback in the sixth round with Riley Leonard, but wouldn't you rather take like a corner with that sixth round pick and you'll probably find a quarterback just as good as Riley Leonard after the draft's over, considering how many quarterbacks left and fell to the seventh round?
And considering that Riley Leonard is basically like another version of Daniel Jones and
And you
Anthony
already
Richardson.
have Daniel Jones in it, right? Exactly. So you get what I'm saying. I think that was like my biggest like thumbs down for them is that they took one corner in the third and didn't address defensive back, not just corner, but safety or anything else
Sure.
anywhere else in this draft.
I think I probably put this one in passable, I think is where I ended up with this one.
Colts are impassable for me as well, so
Okay.
they can stay impassable
Okay.
and very vanilla. But we can move on to a team that was not so vanilla because they made
Yeah.
a big splash, and that's Jacksonville.
They did. They traded the number 2 overall pick, take Travis Hunter. They send a future first round pick essentially to do it. Um, and I think I've fallen on like that. I'm okay with it for them.
I'm okay with it. I think they lost the trade for now.
Sure. I think
I
like
think
in the value aspect of it, yeah, like if you did the math on the picks or whatever the heck, yeah, they probably lost it, but they're getting the better player
at
is
the
what I think.
same time, when you're trading with the Cleveland Browns, it might not make you feel as bad because the two players they're going to draft with those picks, I mean, if you talk historically, they'll
May or may not
probably
work out.
may it probably won't work out. So it's like, hey, at least we're giving it to a team that's just going to throw them away, possibly. So,
Right.
anyways, that being said, though, this draft class heavily depends, and this draft grade and everything heavily depends on how much Travis Hunter impacts this team.
Agreed. I'm gonna lean on just go ahead and say I'm gonna lean on this being impactful because they literally got Travis Hunter. um,
No, no, that's
but
literally all I have
but
on
I
my
won't.
list.
But I don't have him in Great Hall because I don't love taking Ransaw, who's a corner who like I didn't really get to as far as watching him, but I know from a lot of people that was a lot like people did not expect him to go that early, value wise. Milam I like a lot in the third round. He's probably one of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft. Tootin is freaking fast as all get out. And he's a kind of running back that they don't really have. Like they don't have a speedster at that position at all. So I don't mind them taking Jack Kaiser, solid starting running back that can step in day one. So like I like some of the things they did, but I also kind of disagree with like that their second pick in the draft. I didn't really love that everybody kind of agreed that that guy went way too early. But ultimately speaking, like you said, like it's gonna all hinge on Travis Hunter at the end of the day, right?
Right.
So I'm gonna lean on putting this in impactful, um,
So
because they
that's
got Travis Hunter.
I have them in Great Hall with an arrow down. So impactful works for me too. That's I had them on like the borderline of impactful or Great Hall just
And I mean,
because of Travis Hunter.
if nobody else in this class is good and Travis Hunter is good, this is a great haul.
Right.
So,
And like
um,
the last, if the only thing I can really think back to is like thinking of history
mhm,
repeating itself possibly where they took Jalen Ramsey like
yeah,
with a top pick like this, they spent it on a corner defensive back type player, and 2 years later they were in an AFC championship.
yeah,
So there was a lot more to that, but that's just something I'd like to add. This is a type of pick that can change your defense or your, I mean, depending on what side of the ball he plays on, that's the hard part about it.
right.
But
They're
anyways,
saying they're saying primarily offense and then defense second is what it seems
right.
like. But
So
Kansas City Chiefs next. I hate to say it, but this is like when the rich get richer, and I think they just had a really good overall class. There's not one bad pick on this whole board.
sorry, I'm shuffling.
You're good. But like, okay, Josh Simmons is probably the only one that people are like, I don't know. And it's only because the medical stuff, like his knee might not be usable as a tackle. But if it's fine, like if they're able to figure that out, a lot of people thought Simmons might be the best tackle in the whole class.
I mean, I agree with the whole rich get richer thing. I mean, they addressed the defensive needs they needed in the edge and D tackle, put somebody next to Chris Jones, and then I like the weapons they got as well, like in the late rounds,
Yep, agreed.
like Jalen Royals and Brashard Smith,
Yeah.
who I believe he's a pass catching back.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
he's very much something they don't have in that backfield.
and
So
Mahomes loves the check down emergency guy. He can find the what'd you
yeah.
say it last week? It was Noah Gray or somebody
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
just
But like
open and
a lot of people think that this is going to be their like remember when Jarrett McKinnon was like a really important player for them? They kind
Mhm.
of see him fitting that type of role in this offense is like the Jarrett McKinnon pass catching back role, so to speak, which is for whenever the Chiefs were explosive, Jarrett McKinnon was actually a really important part of the offense. So,
Yeah.
I mean I'm at least putting them in great hall. Like every player they got I like a lot. So, I don't want to like go super deep into any of these guys because I just like what they did.
Chiefs
I'm
were in my impactful, so we can put him in Great Hall. That's fun.
okay. So great haul for the Chiefs. Sorry about it. As much as that's probably not fun to say. Oh, and they got Elijah Badger as a UDFA. So shout out to all the Gator fans who
All right.
loved Elijah Badger. Las Vegas Raiders.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. This is the first franchise altering team we've gotten to talk about in a minute. Like just true turn the page in the offseason from the day
Did
the season ended
you
last year
also
to
have them
now.
in franchise altering or no?
Yeah, they're my number one team. Yeah.
I
They
I loved what they did in this draft.
and like I want to preface this before I say anything. Like this is and I hate to say this, but like this has a little off-season bias to it for me
Right.
because they got Gino, because they re-signed Crosby. I mean, like
Yeah.
they've kind of got everything going. They got Brock Bowers last year. That adds a little something for me.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think the Geno part of it is important because they did trade a pick in this year's
mhm.
draft to get Geno. So, like, in a way, you kind of can incorporate that into this draft class, weirdly. Um, but as far as here's my thing, I want to preface this because, like, I'm not saying they like hit a home run with every single pick, but the reason why I put them in franchise altering is because this immediately is going to change the kind of team that they are. Like they are like because they have first off Ashton Tinty. Like that is a clear tone setter for the kind of team this is going to be. Um, even Jack Bash, like Jack Bash is, I think, wildly underrated as far as like what he will be to this team. Like he is going to produce at a high level for Chip Kelly because
Mhm.
Chip Kelly loves these kind of receivers. Um, Darian Porter, one of my favorite guys in the draft. He's like just kind of like Siobhan Revel, except even more like athletic. He's like super fast, super big. Only played like he only started for like 1 year at corner, so he's kind of like an unknown. But the thing is, Pete Carroll had Tariq Woolen and turned him into a Pro Bowl corner, and I think he
Mhm.
might be able to do the same thing with this guy. Charles Grant, small school tackle, but people love this guy for how athletic he is. Anyways, you get my point. Like every pick is pretty good.
My big overall for this is like literally the fact that they took two offensive weapons
Yeah,
in the first two picks, and then they went third round, back to back picks, and just said, you know what? Let's go ahead
tackle.
and let's take tackle,
Yeah,
or I think that's what it was, right?
yeah,
Tackle.
tackle.
No, it says O line,
Well,
but
interior, whatever, offensive
what?
lineman back to back.
Yeah, either way, they went back to back and took the best two guys that were on the board for that position at that time. And like after that fourth pick, I was like, there's nothing the Vegas or the Raiders can do to just like change my mind about this
And then they
draft.
took a guy named Tonka, and that probably sold you even more.
Tonka
and
truck.
and then are you aware of JJ Pegues? Do you know who that
No,
is?
so is that the guy that's never played football?
No, that's the guy that was the Ole Miss DT that was like Don Terry Poe, and they ran him as a running back at Ole Miss. Do you not remember him during the
Uh,
season?
Maybe I'd have to, I don't know.
He
Yeah,
had like 7 rushing touchdowns this past season. But anyways, and then the one thing that I think was funny that they did was they drafted Tommy Millott, who he is listed as wide receiver on here. He was the starting quarterback for Montana State. But if you watch highlights of him, he's basically Taysom Hill. Like that's what he is. And then they also drafted Cam Miller, the quarterback from North Dakota State, which is funny because these two guys were the quarterbacks that faced each other in the FCS championship game. So it was like a weird like continued rivalry, but now they're teammates.
now they're on the
Now they
same
have to work
squad.
together.
Yeah,
So,
or
but
compete against each other still.
to your point, like this is a true franchise altering draft because it truly changes the identity of the team. That is why
Yep.
I'm putting them up there because
Yep.
they immediately become like they went from being one of the most like one of the more unserious teams and organizations over the last couple of years to now like I am so interested and like legitimately respectful of this team going forward.
That is so funny. I don't want to hear anybody hop on the wave.
Hop on the Raiders wave.
I was on the Raiders wave before any
Never
of these
wrong,
guys.
just early.
Just
All
well,
right,
but if you want to hop on now, you know, what do they say? Better
better
Nate than
late than
Lever.
never.
No,
Yeah.
better Nate than Lever. Yeah.
All right, Chargers. They take Omarion Hampton and Trey Harris in round 1 and round 2. They go defensive line in the 3rd and 4th round with Jamar Caldwell and Kyle Kennard, who I like both those players a lot. And then take a couple of like offensive skill weapon shots in the 5th. And I think that ultimately this is going to boil down to like Hampton being the kind of running back that we believe he can be in the Harbaugh scheme, or not even the Harbaugh scheme, but the Greg Roman scheme rather. And then Trey Harris, if he can just basically be what they hoped Quentin Johnson was going to be, and
Right.
actually be a complement to what Ladd does, that seems like a lot of what this is going to depend on for the quality of this draft. And I ultimately gave them a great haul. I thought they did a really good job.
Yep. I am totally cool with putting them there. I just think that, you know, Harbaugh just kills the run game. And like
Yeah.
you're saying, that's just like the big stick out for me. And the fact that they no, yeah, that'll do it. Yeah. Trey Harrison the third, number 55 pick. I really like that pick. So
Yeah.
that yeah,
Yeah.
that does it.
Yeah. For the Rams, they obviously had the other end of the James Pierce trade where they gained a first round pick. So that's something to take into account with this draft class is that they didn't have a first round pick, but they got an extra next year, right? And much like the Browns, I think both of these teams are looking at it this way where they're like, we kind of want to make sure that we can be in on next year's quarterback class, regardless of
Right.
who that is that's available. So that way they can have the capital to trade up to go get that guy. Of the picks that they did make, they took Terrence Ferguson in the second. Fine player. I think it's a little early. Like I thought it went like he went like a round earlier than I probably would have taken him. Josiah Stewart, fine. They traded up for Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round, which is not nothing because if you trade up for like they gave up a 6th round pick, I know, but like they traded up to get a running back, which tells me something that about like how much they probably don't like Blake Corum.
Right. I was
After
just about
one
to say
year.
that because Kyron Williams obviously is doing his thing,
Yeah,
but Blake Corum might not be.
for long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I kind of knew that. I think a lot of we were all kind of down on Blake Corum as much
yeah,
as he was on like the national championship team
yeah,
and he was this impact player. it didn't translate to NFL football.
Yeah,
I liked the fact they picked up a first round. That really adds a little something for
yeah,
the draft for me. But other than that, like the first two picks, I put them down as solid, and then everything else is kind of vanilla to me.
yeah. I'm gonna put
Besides
them in the
trading up for the
passable.
running back.
I think I'm putting them in the passable category, just because they do get that first round pick from the trade. But like without that, the class it would be kind of a disappointing class if it were not for that.
I put them at the bottom team for my impactful
Okay.
tier. So putting them in passable is totally fine for me.
Okay.
And I think that I put a lot of weight on that first round pickup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like
I
you
think
said, it's probably going to turn into a quarterback.
more than likely. That's just how these things kind of go. All right. Oh, and I forgot they got Sean Dolak, who actually is a good UDFA. He like led the FBS in tackles last year at Buffalo. Miami Dolphins. Kind of a weird draft to me. Like Kenneth
One of
Grant's a
my
good,
least favorites,
yeah,
honestly.
Kenneth Grant, good player, but like at 13, I here's the thing. I thought that this team desperately needs corner, especially if you're going to trade Jalen Ramsey, like it seems like. Like who's going to start at corner for this team if not Jalen Ramsey? That's my question. I don't know who it's going to be. And I mean, the thing is, they did need the interior defensive line because they couldn't stop anybody on the run, which Kenneth Grant does solve that. But you go and draft, you not even draft, you trade up for Jonas Savanaia, and you don't have any other picks after that. Which that kind of is the problem. Is like they had a first round pick, and then they traded away in that trade for Jonas Savanaia. They traded away a third round pick and a fourth round pick. So, and to me, those are picks that like you use to go get like a corner or two, right? Just take
Hmm.
shots on guys in those rounds where there's still guys there. Instead, they don't pick one until the fifth. It's just weird draft strategy to me. And then they get like Quinn Ewers and Ollie Gordon in the late rounds, which is just kind of funny that those are two guys that we thought would have been like first and second rounders before the season.
Yeah,
Um,
so yeah, and that's what's funny is because I have two notes that are neutrals in this, and that is I am okay with the first round pick, and I actually don't mind the value of picking up Ewers in the seventh, considering that
it's fine,
I mean the Miami Dolphins just haven't had a backup quarterback worth anything, and have probably been the team that needs a backup quarterback more than anything
right?
in the past. And like, but my biggest negative note is that they lost the meat of the draft.
Yeah,
Like they made a bad, and honestly, I think they lost the trade
yeah,
that they made,
agreed.
and they lost from round two to round seven. Honestly, they lost from two on
Yeah,
the rest of the
agreed.
draft. So that being said, the Dolphins are actually the bottom team in my disappointed category. I don't know where
I'm
you have
perfectly
them,
fine with that.
but that's where I have them. I didn't see what I wanted to see out of the
Yep,
Dolphins.
I'm
So
perfectly fine with that assignment. Next, we have the Vikings.
on to your team.
I'll go ahead and tell you this is what the f are we doing? I'm putting them there regardless of what you think.
That's fine.
All right, this is my whole thing. I'm not gonna rant too much, but Donovan Jackson's a good player. He's actually like a really good player, right? Like
Hmm.
this is fine. This is a good spot to draft him. You needed another guard, especially considering that you had injuries at tackle. Like he can play tackle if you need him to. But like the Falcons and the Texans, the two teams literally right after the Vikings were able to trade out of their picks and get more picks. The Vikings had the least amount of picks coming into the draft.
And
So
you
why
didn't trade out
couldn't
of your pick
yeah,
and beat those guys to it type of
right, like
thing.
why there's no way that those two teams were getting calls to trade back and you
And the
weren't.
Vikings weren't.
Right. I just would find that impossible to believe that that was happening. So that's number one. Like we should have traded back in any opportunity we had the chance to do so, and we didn't. Secondly, we didn't draft a single freaking defensive back.
I was about to say the same thing. I was like, I don't know what you guys are doing at the DB position, knowing what you have missing after last season.
Yeah, I don't know
I mean,
what we're doing on that side.
there's one coming off injury that like I guess you're gonna get back this year, right?
Yeah,
But
Mekhi Blackman's coming off of a torn ACL, and he tore it early, so it wasn't like a late thing where it's like he's pushing. He's expected to be fully ramped up and back, and he's good. I will say
other
that
than
he's a
that,
good corner. Byron Murphy's back, which is good, but like Man, are we thin at corner after that? It's tough. It gets real thin real fast after that. Ty Felton is like we just didn't need another wide receiver. Like it was fine the way it was. Why do we need to go spend a third round pick on that? And then I mean honestly, like the fifth and sixth rounders, I don't mind. Especially like the DT from Georgia, who was just a guy who didn't really get a ton of playing time, but like athletically, he's just like all the other Georgia guys. So take a shot on him. Maybe he turns into something. But yeah, this is the first of, and maybe the only, what the F are
Well,
we doing here? But
well, I will say this though, Peyton. Like, bro, you have a first round pick, a third round pick, and for this to be a good draft for you, you can't miss either of those picks.
you're right.
And then you have like a fifth and two sixes. Like, what did you
Right.
really expect out? Did you
Well,
expect them to come out with like this? Man, I really love what we did. Like, I
well,
and
here's the thing. If let's just say they do the Giants trade instead of the Texans, right?
right.
You end up with a second round pick and then two extra third round picks. That's like if you have two extra picks and you pick good players at those spots, that changes the draft completely.
But at the same time, they know you're not going to pick Jackson Dart.
No,
I
but
guess
they
they know
might. But the
Texans
Rams
aren't
might
either.
have.
Yeah, I guess the Rams might have. Yeah, I
But
guess
my
you're right.
so like that's only really the only reason. It's just I just don't understand how they managed to not get more picks for having the options to trade back clearly that teams right after them did. That's really it. But
Right.
we can move on to the next team. New England Patriots. We could have some positive talk here because this is like another one of the like best drafts of any of the teams that we talked about in
Do
this
we just
video.
go ahead and put the stamp on it? They're in my franchise
Yeah,
altering.
franchise altering, right, like might be number one,
This
depending.
is so. Remember how I said Carolina or the Cardinals were in my top three?
Yeah.
Vegas was my favorite. The
Yep.
Patriots were my number two.
Okay.
So really like this draft. Really loved the first three picks. Honestly,
Yeah.
the first three picks were money.
Dude, the first like I like all the way down to like this pick here, the kicker, like even the kicker, like all
Yeah,
they did not miss a pick until the seventh round, which
and you
like
could be 100% correct. But here's my problem: is that once I get outside the third round, dude, I really start to lose who some of these guys are.
okay. I'll tell
So
you. I'll give you a quick synopsis. Jared Wilson, weak center class, but he was the best center in the draft. And he's a center from Georgia. Like you could probably assume he's going to be pretty good.
yeah.
Um, Joshua Farmer, people thought he was going to go in like the third, second round, even like late second, and he falls away at the
Wait, I
fourth.
know who that is. Force State. I know
Yeah,
who that
Florida State
is.
guy,
Yep.
great player. Braden
See,
Swinson,
and then I have those. It's like, oh, I know him. He was drafted
yeah,
in the sixth. I know who that
yeah.
is.
Braden Swinson had like 8.5 sacks at LSU this year. Was their best edge player. He was like a legit like I don't even want to call. He was a badass. Like I'll just say it. Like he is a badass at the edge. He if you watch him at any LSU game, you're like, who is that guy? Because he's just fighting on every single down to get to the quarterback. It's not like there's no downs off of that guy. Borregales made basically every kick he made, and then we didn't even talk about the first couple picks yet. Will Campbell tackle for Drake May, like I bet most sound tackle. I know he's undersized, but like he's good. Like
Yeah,
nobody, he played in the SEC. Like what do you want? More do you want from him?
no question.
Travion Henderson, probably RB2 in the class, or maybe I'm sorry,
I'd say
RB3 in the
probably
class.
RB3. Yeah,
But either way, Patriots definitely needed a running back because Ramondre Stevenson,
is not doing it.
yeah, kind of fell off really quick.
And neither is it Antonio Pierce, is there? Is it
Uh,
Antonio Pierce? That's not
what
who it is.
as the OC?
No, I'm like blanking. The running back.
Oh,
The
Antonio
running back.
Gibson.
Antonio Gibson.
I was
Gosh.
like
I was like
the head
Antonio
coach for the
Pierce.
Raiders.
Yeah, I'm like, no, why did I say Antonio Pierce? No,
Um,
yeah, Antonio Gibson. Thank you.
yeah, and then Kyle Williams. I mean, like super fast, twitchy receiver that's unlike anybody else that they have on that offense. So like, you
Mhm.
get another weapon for Drake May. I think they aced the draft.
Yeah, I think it's without a doubt they got an A+ from me. So
Yeah.
glad we both agreed there. Now let's move on to a team that didn't impress me so much. Just kind
No.
of confused.
Agreed.
New Orleans Saints.
This team is just I feel like they can just never get out of their own way. I feel like
It's
whether
like they are ever since like the Ricky Williams thing, this team has just sucked at drafting, it seems like.
yeah, Kelvin Banks, good player. I'll say that. I don't know if I would have taken him at 9. Like if I and the reason I say that is because I think the Saints were in a position where they just needed to take like the best player on the board and not draft for like need, which is I think what they did. I think they said like, oh, we need a tackle. We just declined Trevor Penning's 5th-year option, so we're not going to have a tackle after that. So we need a tackle no matter what, rather than just saying like, dude, we need players in general. Who's the best player right now?
Yeah, who's the best player we can add to our team?
Right,
Who's the best overall player that we can put onto the squad?
right.
I agree. And then the fact that they took in the second round is like, what are we doing?
Yeah, the 26-year-old quarterback who's been injured like every year of his career.
And has tried like five different colleges and just
Yeah,
hasn't worked out at hardly any of them. And now he's finally
yeah.
making his NFL debut and was, I mean, bro, he's T-ball teammates with a guy who's already been to the Super Bowl, already been to the NFC Championship, and Brock Purdy. And like Brock Purdy was worth the last pick in the draft. This guy's getting picked in the second round. Like, I, I don't know what's going on. And like, honestly, like, why are you not just like, screw it, take Shador there?
I mean, I would have if you had taken any other quarterback that was available, other than and maybe like I mean, obviously Dylan Gabriel might be a stretch, but like between Shador, Jalen Milrow, and there's one more I'm missing that I can't put my finger on right now.
Jackson Dart.
No, well, Dart went in the first. I'm just trying to get like guys that were there at that point in time.
He is in the oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're talking about their second round pick.
Yeah, but like
Jackson Dart was projected to be there at
yeah,
that point.
at that point, sure. But like take Jalen Milrow or Shador there, like, and I feel a lot better about this draft. Just that's the one guy that it's like if you take anybody else but him. Vernon Broughton is fine. I think that was a little early for him. And then like funny enough, I like what they did after that pick. It's just the first 3 picks I'm not really crazy about. So I'm gonna put them in the disappointed tier. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yep,
Okay.
disappointed. I was
Okay.
gonna say, yeah, the one thumbs up I have is that they beef their interior line from that point on. Or no, maybe I'm looking at the
Well,
yeah, interior
I mean they did
lines.
technically. They did.
Interior lines is what I
Yeah.
put. So
Yeah.
all right, we
But
can
like
move
they
on.
and I
Oh,
mean
go
like
ahead.
they get good like Danny Stutzman's a good player and so is Devin Neal, so is Quincy Riley. So like they did good on day 3, but everything else is like and I mean Jonas Sanker's a good player too. But like everything else was just like all right, that didn't make any sense. All right, let's
All
try
right.
and speed up the pace a little bit here. We have the New York Giants. I'm going to say this is either Great Hall is probably where I'm leaning or yeah, probably Great Hall because I mean the first 5 picks are just like, dude, not
They're the
knocked it out of the
last.
park. Other than like, I
They're
guess the
last in my franchise altering. They were the bottom team. So if
okay,
you want to put
so
them,
so they're in your franchise altering, but the last one, so it's like
the
right
reason
on the
they're in my
border.
franchise altering is number one, Abdul Carter is going to make this possibly one of the best defensive lines in the
Yep,
league.
yep,
Like it's going to automatically just bump them up from like maybe the fifth spot last year to like number three
yeah,
for me, number two. Second of all, if Jackson Dart does develop to be a quarterback that New York takes interest in after Russell Wilson or whatever, then boom, that adds another thing. And then, dude, I really like what they did, like you said, up to like round five. Like they just knocked it out of the park.
yeah.
Cam Scatabo at round four, I think that's like a great fourth round pick.
And it's a good
Um,
compliment to like Tracy because they're two different kind of
yeah,
running backs.
two different
So
backs. One's like power guy, third down back, short yardage back, and then the other guy's like your speed, open field type running back. So I really like what they did. That's why I put them so high up. Like I said, they were my bottom one in franchise altering, but we can put them wherever you feel comfortable.
I think I'm gonna put him in franchise altering because the only reason I had him in Great Hall is because like I don't love Jackson Dart, but here's the thing with quarterback, you traded up in the first round and you only gave up 2 third-round picks. That's usually a lot more of an expensive price, right?
Right.
So given that they did a really good job of like paying it, like is anybody really gonna remember that they traded those 2 third-round picks? Probably not.
Well, and the thing is too is that Dayball's that's like his wheelhouse.
Is developing quarterbacks, right? And I think
So
if there's
like
one team that he could have gone to, it's probably the right team.
right. So all right, well let's go across across the way here to the Jets. Um, talk about what they did.
Passable is where I ended
Yeah,
up with this one.
yeah. So the Jets are in my passable as well. It's very vanilla. They just grabbed the most plug and play type player they could grab at pick number 7 with Membu, just a guy that's going to work, guy that no one will complain about. Um, they took a tight end in the second round. I'm not a huge fan of either. I mean, I'm a fan of him, but I think they could have easily just went and gotten like a playmaker like Tyler Warren in the first, and no one would have batted an eye.
Right,
Other than
right.
other than that, they're just struggling. Like they're another team that's just struggling to me to find an identity of like what are you trying to do? What is your goal? Like Salah, when Salah was there, everyone knew that like what you were known for is having a really good defense, and now that's starting to kind of take a step back. I know they got Aaron Glenn this year. I know that's probably going to put the defense right back where it needs to be, but I'm just very confused on what identity they're trying to go with because they add Aaron Glenn and don't take a defensive player until, I mean, I guess the third round, but as a
Yeah,
defensive head coach, you'd think he'd want like a
an
guy that
edge
he
guy.
really likes at the first one of the first couple picks,
Yeah,
and you didn't do so. So,
yeah. I
um,
mean, they do already have a couple of those guys, but I do agree with you. Like maybe they could take one more guy that could really solidify himself as like not just a rotational edge rusher.
I mean, Ben Johnson walked into Chicago's program and they were like, "Okay, what do you want? A tight end, a wide receiver, what else do you want?" And oh, you want some a couple tackles in the offseason? Cool. Let me go get you this guy that's won a few Super Bowls. This, that, and the other. It's like Aaron Glenn gets to New York and they're just like, we'll give you an offensive tackle. Like, does that make sense at all? How
No,
like
it does make sense
one
given that.
building's
Yeah,
just leaving it wide open for the coach, and
yeah.
one building is just going, nope, we're gonna keep sucking, and that's it.
So they end
Um,
up impassable.
yeah.
We're gonna move on to the Eagles, and I mean, Eagles kind of another situation where they just did a really good job.
Rich get richer. Yeah,
Yeah,
they always draft well, especially defensively. The linebacker they got in the first round is going to be a beast
yeah,
on their team, honestly. And I think that's also the issue here with a lot of other teams is that teams like the Eagles, now that they've set themselves up, they have the luxury to draft some guys and go, "Hey, it's okay. Take your time to get good."
right.
Like
Because yeah,
they can do that now. They can take this Jahad Campbell guy and go, "You know what? By year 3, just ready to knock the socks off."
yep. And I mean, they even took like safety is like the one weakness on this team, and like getting a guy like Makuba who's just going to be able
Hmm.
to be a ball hawk back there is really fun because he's just going to fly around. And outside of that, I mean, like I think that the guys that they took, I mean, the fourth round pick, I think is the only one that I'm not like super crazy about, but like in the day 3 stuff they did was like getting some of these guys as late as they did. I'm like, dude, how do you get away with that? So,
Hmm.
I put them in Great Hall is where I ended up with
Yeah,
them.
I put them in impactful, but they're one of my top 3 teams in impactful. So you can put them
Okay,
in
we can
Great
put
Hall.
the, you
That
know what, we'll put them in impactful. That's fine with me. I'm trying to get this a little even. You know what? I'll fight for them. I'm gonna put them in Great Hall.
go
That's
ahead.
one where I'll fight for them a little bit more than the
Sure.
others. Um,
All right.
they did a lot of
Well,
trades too. So, Pittsburgh Steelers, no quarterback. So probably
what are
gonna
we
be Aaron
doing?
Rodgers. Um, but outside of that, outside of the fact, I mean, they took Will Howard, but like I'm not counting that. Outside of that, not bad. I thought
I
they did okay.
yeah, my number one note is not flashy, but very effective.
Yeah, I think that
Go ahead.
getting Derek Carmen and Jack Sawyer to probably start day 1, probably.
Yeah, and I honestly think with Najee Harris leaving the offense, Caleb Johnson's going to get some carries as well.
Yep,
The second round
agreed.
running back they took, I think he's going to get some work, and he was really good at Iowa. I think he led, or maybe it was like he was second in touchdowns.
Yeah,
He was really high in touchdowns this year. Like you said, taking Will Howard, not really going to count it, but Jack
no,
Sawyer in the third is massive.
yeah.
Um,
And I
so
mean, in a
yeah,
way, this is another situation where we can kind of like include DK Metcalf because they did
right.
trade their second round pick. So if you add in that, I mean that does kind
And
of make
that
this
allows them to acquire Will Howard too in the sixth. I mean, if you add
right,
that same
right,
from that same trade, they also got a guy
right.
that's late quarterback. The late quarterbacks this year were abundant, but
Yeah. And I mean, they had one of my favorite UDFAs in Sebastian Castro from Iowa, who can play safety legitimately for them if they need him to. But yeah, I think it was a good. I would probably put them in either impactful or where'd you end up with them?
So they were my number one team in my impactful
Let's put them
section.
in impactful. Then I think that's a good spot for them. We are going to then go to the what team is this? 49ers. There we go. All right. I like some of the players they got. Okay. Michael Williams was a little early considering that he's like another traitsy guy. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I wonder if it's going to work or not because unlike, he basically is Trayvon, or not Trayvon, goodness, what the heck's the guy's name? The guy from Jacksonville, Trayvon Walker. He's
Oh,
basically Trayvon Walker all over again, where it's like, Trayvon Walker's a good player, but he wasn't always the player he is now. So you kind of are betting on, you know, Robert Sala to develop him into a true edge rusher, which is fine. But like immediate, the good thing is he's going to be able to stop the run immediately. It's just a matter of like as a pass rusher, I wonder if it's ever going to happen. Same thing with Alfred Collins, good defensive tackle from Texas. Same thing with CJ West. So like their run defense got a lot better. But like other than that, that's like about it. I did not really love a lot of what they did in this draft. They were probably one of my like least favorite drafts, I think.
so I said that I mean, in my notes, the first few picks lacked value. Like the first few picks, I think they reached on two of the three.
They
Um,
definitely reached on the first and the third. The second one was probably appropriate.
okay. And then I do think they didn't do bad. Like day three, I don't think it was a terrible, but they also had a crap ton of picks. So
Yeah.
it's hard for them to really, it doesn't look bad when you have nine names up there for day three. But yeah, they're down. They're actually a bottom two team in my passable category.
Okay.
Where if you want to throw them in disappointed, I am not
I'll put him in passable
opposed.
only because like if Michael Williams actually becomes a good pass rusher, that makes this a lot better. But like they did at least to be fair, they did at least like improve the run defense a lot. The only other thing is they didn't draft any offensive linemen, which that's also a concern too, considering like
Mhm.
that Trent Williams always gets hurt at this point in his career and all that stuff. Um, Outside of that, Seattle Seahawks next team. On the other side of this division, this team did really good in the draft.
Yeah, so my two big things that I was really happy about is number one, the interior lineman picks that they picked
Yeah.
throughout the whole draft were pretty nice.
Yep.
They picked some really good players, and then like I think one of the best moves is bringing in Milrow and moving off of
Yes.
Sam Howell. Like I know Sam Darnold's there, but Sam Darnold, I mean, if we really take a step back, I know he was really good last season. If we take a step back though, like Sam Darnold, that doesn't mean he's going to be good next season. It doesn't mean
Right.
he's your answer. It doesn't mean that his career has made a resurgence. Like he was just maybe in the right system at the right time with the right team, the right coach, and we'll find out. But I do like the insurance pick at three and getting Sam Howell out the
Right.
building.
It's not even an insurance pick. It's like a actually good lottery ticket to have.
Or
It's
I mean, I guess yeah, I guess it's like a really bad way of saying it because I do
right,
like the
right.
pick.
Because he's more of a project as like a pocket presence thrower, but ultimately like he is so much of a athlete that they can still use him. They can kind of, like one person that I heard compared it to, like I liked how they put it. They can kind, if they wanted to, they could kind of use him if they wanted to just get him on the field because he's that good of an athlete, just a good a football player in general. They could use him kind of like Justin Fields was used in Pittsburgh last year.
I thought you were going to say Mariota gets used
No,
sometimes.
no.
I
I'm
was
saying
like,
like where it's like run game stuff, right? Just because
well,
like
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Mariota played with Derek Carr in Las
Oh
Vegas, and
well,
like
yeah. I guess you're
Mariota
right. I
would come
forgot
on the
about
field
that.
and just run the ball once a series.
I
Just
forgot
come on
about
the
that.
field, and they're like, "Up!" Everyone knows it's a run play, and like 90% of the time, he'd run the football, and
Yeah,
it's just something to get an athlete on the field,
yeah,
even though it's not needed. So I agree. I like what they did. I gave them an A minus
yeah.
on my list, and I put them right at like in the top half of the impactful section.
Okay.
But you can, I mean,
No, I
if you
think I
want,
think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think that they ultimately They ultimately did a really good job. I would probably lean towards
Well,
putting them
let's
in
go.
Great Hall.
Well, let's move them there because we also need to take into effect they did pick up Cooper Cup. They
Yeah.
did do a couple things in free agency, getting Sam Darnold, getting Geno out, getting a younger quarterback. I think all that added in, it makes a little sense because, like we said, the Geno pick
Turned
or the
into
Geno
Milrow.
is connected to getting Milrow. So,
Right.
all right. Well, we put the Seahawks there, and we can move off them and go to who's next. Let's see. I
We
think
have the
it's
Tampa
Tampa
Bay
Bay.
Buccaneers,
Okay, gotcha. Now, one of my three teams in the WTF are they doing?
which is
Now,
crazy because
crazy because you have now realistically, I have them in my passable section,
okay. I think
but
we can probably settle on passable or impactful because this is a consensus between you and I. So I think that's probably more reasonable. Um,
here's the thing is like I have the same issue with them as I have with Green Bay. It's like
okay, where it's
you
like,
have
what are
Mike
you doing?
Evans, you just
Yeah,
signed Chris Godwin, you added him back, you have a good 1-2 punch, and you add Emeka Ibuka as your first round pick at number 19, and there are plenty more needs on the other side of the ball for this team.
right, right. However,
However, go ahead. They did take the next
their next
four
four
picks were
picks were, I think, like at each round home runs as far as value,
okay.
and like and I will say Morrison has like a similar like Will Johnson health thing going on. So like it's kind of a similar thing where if Morrison can play and he's fine, then this is I think this draft gets better. But if he for some reason can't, then it's like, all right, well you basically wasted a second round pick on him. So
So let me ask you a question because this is also like my big problem because I do agree the middle four picks are really nice. Peyton, if I came to you before this draft started and said the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to draft two positions on the offensive side of the ball, two
they're both
players,
wide receiver.
what positions do you think they're going to be? There is not a chance in hell you would say one of them would be a wide receiver.
Absolutely not. No, I
You
would
would
have
go, oh,
never
they'll
said
probably
that.
pick up a guard. They'll probably pick up a center. They maybe pick up a tackle. They might pick up this. They might. Nope. They didn't want to take a tight end there. They didn't want to take. Oh, I mean, because Kate Otton's really not that great of a
No,
presence on
he's
the
not.
offensive side of the ball. If you're going to improve the pass catching side, at least you already have wide receiver locked up. Get a good tight end that can block and catch the ball. I just don't understand it. That's my biggest issue. Now, I do think it'll be impactful. I do think
Okay.
that Emeka Ibuka will be really impactful, and I know that Mike Evans has about 2 years left.
Right. Right.
And like I'm not saying 2 years left in general. I think he has 2 years left in Tampa Bay. Whether he
Okay.
just decides to retire or not, he might do a little Julio Jones tour type thing, but or like what DeAndre Hopkins kind of did. But I think that getting Ibuka is good for the next, maybe 2 years from now. So maybe it's a plan ahead. But I also don't know if he's the guy.
To like step in and fill the shoes. I get what you're saying. I
Yeah.
think I
So
think I understand what you're saying. So are we going to put him in impactful or passable? Obviously, I'm
impactful.
like way higher on that. That's fine. I think impactful is the right place to put it because I think in retrospect, maybe yeah, I think you make a good point that like immediate need, like maybe they just feel like, hey, we're gonna run Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and make a book out there and try and stop us. And Baker's just gonna throw for 6,000 yards or whatever. Not really, but you get what I'm saying. Like maybe that's just what they're gonna do. Um,
Maybe.
all right, so we have two more teams. We have the
That's
Tennessee
it.
Titans. Titans who had the number one overall pick. They took Cam Ward. I think we both feel pretty good about that. The rest of this draft is little interesting. Like I don't even want to say interesting. It's weird. Um, they take Oluwafemi Oladejo, who's kind of a project player that I'm not necessarily sold on. As like the Panthers defensive ends that they took, both of them, I like better than this guy. Like I shouldn't even say that, but like the edges that were available whenever they took Olufemi, I liked a lot better than Olufemi. Like I thought it was just kind of a reach for where he was. And then I love Kevin Winston Jr. That's like actually one of my favorite picks. And then they like weird on the day three stuff. Like whenever the problem I had is like, why didn't they prioritize pass catcher?
Right.
Like
I
the
have
thing
no
for
idea.
me was
Like,
what To me, you take wide receiver at round 2, pick 20.
Yeah, go ahead and get your guy for Cam. Like, go ahead and do your brother a favor.
Yeah. Granted, they signed Xavier Restrepo as an undrafted free agent, so I guess they eventually did get his guy, technically. But aside from that, like, I like Elikayu Manor, and a lot of people did. Like, the funny thing is, this draft, if you just swap Io Manor and Aladejo, right? Like, where they were drafted, it's like, okay, makes sense. But
Yeah.
Io Manor fell a little bit, and they got a really good value on him. So to me, I think this is like it at least has to be impactful at the very least, right?
So this is they're the worst team in my franchise altering group.
Okay,
And
so
this is why. The Tennessee Titans haven't picked a first, they've been bad for a while now.
mid to bad, yeah,
They haven't picked a first round quarterback since Marcus Mariota in 2015.
right.
Marcus Mariota has not played with the Tennessee Titans since 2018. I want to say
That's a
maybe
long time.
2019. So now they've gone 5 years with no starting quarterback. They haven't drafted one in the first round, and they're out of like the Derrick Henry era. They're out of that whole thing. I think
Yeah,
it's totally turned over now. They're out of the Vrabel era, all that. Bringing Cam Ward to this team is franchise altering at this point, in my opinion.
I can
I
agree.
think,
I can agree with the sentiment, kind of like in the same way that the Raiders were franchise altering, right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, well, the Raiders did a lot more than the Titans did, in my opinion. I
I
just think
think,
like
I think,
since, go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
think since you know what, continue because I would like to hear
So,
your argument.
well, this is my thing is that like it, outside of Marcus Mariota, before that, Jake Locker, 2008, last time they drafted a quarter, or I'm sorry, 2011, drafted quarterback. Jake Locker did nothing. Before that, Vince Young, 2006, Vince Young did nothing. Before that, I want to say it had to be Steve McNair in like
I think you're right.
90 something, 94, whenever he got drafted. So that all being said, this is like in my opinion, the best quarterback they've gotten a draft since 2006 when Vince Young came to the league and just busted.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So,
I mean,
so looking at their quarterback room, you can't really say that the Tennessee Titans have had a lot of chance to succeed, considering their QB room has just been a black hole since Steve McNair passed away, honestly. So
so I guess the question then is, after reevaluating the drafts and stuff, I probably lean towards putting them in Great Hall. Like, how close are they to like?
that's no, they're the bottom team in my franchise altering. They're the only team in my franchise altering that I have an arrow pointed down for. Like
Okay,
as in like I Great Hall is probably where they belong, but I have my arguments to put them in franchise argument or
your
altering.
argument is actually really good because of the quarterback factor of it. I think it's just the rest of the draft is a little like it's good. It's a good draft, but the way they got there is a little confusing.
I completely agree with you. I just think that they're at least moving in a direction. We can at least see the
They
Tennessee
are.
Titans going,
Yes.
okay, you're going to take a stand. After last year, they could have gotten a first round quarterback and they didn't, and they got JC Latham instead.
Yeah.
So now it's like, hey, like let's, it's time to take a quarterback. Last year, they
Yep.
could have had like one of three guys, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix. We're all still on the board when they picked. So, all right. Well, let's move on to the last team in the Washington Commanders, who, I mean, honestly, they're kind of in the same boat for Minnesota as me, man. Like they only had 5 picks. There's not a whole lot you can do with it. Like
I
they
mean,
didn't do
I
as
will say
bad. They didn't do
they
as bad,
they
but
did
like
better than that with five
no,
picks.
they did. But I'm saying in the scenario of like how much can you really do with 5 picks? I mean, they pick once in
Right.
the first, once in the second, kind of like Minnesota. Y'all picked once in the first, once in the third, and then it was like sixth, sixth, seventh. Well, they have
Right.
fourth, sixth, seventh, but
Right. I think the two players they got in the first and second round are like two of the best picks in the whole draft as far as like where they got them, especially Trey Amos. Like Trey Amos is up there with like he could have been a borderline first round pick at corner, honestly, in my opinion. So with that said, I gave them, given that they didn't really have a lot to work with in the first place, because they traded for Larry Tunzel, so that's kind of part of this as well, and Debo. We should mention that as well. Like so
yep.
they traded for Larry Tunzel and Debo, which does factor into this. I would probably lean towards them being in the impactful group.
Okay. I have them
But
in my passable, so impactful works for me.
okay, I'm gonna say impactful, and I think that that probably rounds it out. And I mean, like honestly, the distribution here is pretty good because honestly, if we just got rid of this category, it would be pretty even all across the board.
It
Like,
would actually. There'd be like one standout in the Great Hall, and
yeah,
then everything else would be pretty even. So
which ultimately, like, if we were to do like traditional grades and do like
A, B, C,
like
D.
A, B, C, then it would be pretty fair. Like, I think that
Yeah.
that would work. So, all right. So as you guys can see, here's our draft tiers. Here's where we ended up. Might post this on socials. Let us know what you think about where we ended up on some of these teams. But yeah, this is the official 2Ps draft tiers as far as draft classes for the NFL teams from the 2025 NFL draft goes. And yeah, that's about it. I do not have anything else for us before we get out of here. Parker, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, just good luck to all your NBA teams this week that are finishing the first round of playoffs, going into the second round. Other than that, yeah, everybody have a good week. Good luck in all your dynasty drafts if you have any coming up.
Yeah. And thanks for sticking with us through this long episode. Appreciate it. Have a good night, guys.
Peace.